Director of the Governor's Biodiversity Conservation Office. Can we give him a loud, loud round of applause? Huh? Are they ready?
I can give it to them.
The what? The PowerPoint? Oh, you're going to say something, Dan? Okay, yeah. Come, wait. Let me see where you come after.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you about some of the ongoing biodiversity conservation projects that we are implementing at the moment. Okay. Yeah, it's great to see all of you folks. I was watching presentations yesterday. It's so wonderful to see some of you folks who have done and published scientific paper that really help us over the years. For example, Dr. Peterson, we always use his. I want to share with you about some of the benefits and importance of wetland mangrove restoration in American Samoa. Currently, we receive funding to help restore the wetland in Leone, and the end of this week, we submitted another proposal to help restore wetlands in Masafau, Alofau, and Awa. Okay, go ahead. Okay, go ahead. This is a wetland area in Masafau. Next slide. This is an aerial view from the drone of Leone. Go back. Leone wetland. And next slide. And our main objectives is to help clean up the debris and the waste and help restore, replant mangrove species and riparian species to restore disturbed wetland areas. Wetland and mangrove forests store massive amount of natural carbon sink that help mitigate the climate crisis. They are the natural solution to climate change. Around 40% of the world's species live and breed in wetlands, including many that are found nowhere else in the planet, such as the pe'ape'awai or the shift-tailed bat. Wetlands provide numerous benefits and act as buffer against devastating effects of flooding, drought, natural disaster, protecting vulnerable village communities during extreme weather. Wetlands provide essential services to people, but they are often misunderstood as swamp-like things that you want to eliminate. Wetland destruction deprives communities of these benefits and can lead to decreased forest productivity, biodiversity loss, and an increase in pests and diseases. Our wetland restoration project will help protect the biological reach and cultural significance of wetland areas on Tutuila. by establishing healthy wetland ecosystem by removing waste and replanting degraded mangrove forest zone with native mangroves, riparian tree seedlings to support healthy and resilient environment, increasing carbon sequestration and purify fresh water by absorbing pollutants and excess nutrients before reaching adjacent coral reef areas. Some of the benefits of restoring wetlands, as documented in the Ramsar Convention 2023, wetland shelter plants and animals. Biodiversity is very high around wetland areas. Wetland restoration strengthens the local food chain and attracts wildlife. Wetlands replenish and purify water and serve as great filters which trap sedimentation and remove pollutants and boost the natural groundwater supply. Mangrove wetlands store carbon, despite accounting for only 5 to 8% of the planet's surface. The roots of the plants found in wetland absorbs approximately 20 to 30% of the carbon present in the planet. Wetlands minimize the impact of floods and storms. Wetlands serve as sponges, slowing the water and soaking it up, reducing its impact, saving homes and life. Wetlands store excess water and slowly release it during dry season with little rainfall. Wetlands improve livelihood. They provide habitats and safe breeding grounds for fish and other wildlife, therefore allowing more fish to breed, provide to the community fisheries around the island. And lastly, wetland boost or improve ecotourism. A restored wetland can be a long-term magnet for visitors, a natural attraction that attracts tourists while also providing opportunities to serve them. Here in Leone, there's a lot of cultural sites, and this is one of the sites where a lot of the folks in the past have come to American Samoa for exchange of Asian tools, like rock tools. And we always bring the students around so they can see it, and teachers as well. Next slide. So this is a map of our invasive bird removal or control project. As you see, the yellow circle are the areas where we trap and remove invasive birds. So mostly in the western area of the island where the landfill and most of the restaurant and plantations, that's where we find most of these birds, especially the landfill. So as of today, our field crew have removed more than 48,000 invasive birds. And only 3 species of invasive birds are found on Tutuila, the minor bird, common minor bird, and a bulbul bird. Fortunately, there are no minor birds present in the Manua or Rose Atoll and Swains Island. So we work really hard to make sure that we control and hopefully eradicate the invasive birds on Tutuila to protect Manua, Motusa, and all the other islands. Next slide. Next slide. And some of the important reasons why we work on removing minor birds is because the minor birds damage our agricultural crops. And most of our vendors for the school lunch program depend on their papaya plantation, cucumber, tomato to sell at the market or at the school lunch program. But these aggressive invasive birds damage them or eat most of them, and even in churches, they disrupt Sunday services. and wake people up in the morning, or you can't sleep in the evening because they're very noisy at that time. So there we come as invasive bird terminators and look for them. And like I said, more than 48,000 birds have been barbecued or soup, make sandwich, and we have a cookbook coming up. We're working on the final recipe. Next slide. Invasive tree control. And we are currently working on removing some of the most aggressive invasive trees. Some of them are listed in the list of the 100 of the world invasive species by ICUN, like the African tulip, lopa, the puruma moe, and the famous tamalingi tree. Next slide. So with the African tulip, it's very challenging, and this is very important work for our community, especially the farmers, because the herbicide that killed these invasive trees is not found or sold in any of the hardware store. We have to special order them, and they're very expensive. It costs about $2,000 per gallon. So only the government can do that kind of work, and we're honored to be invasive tree terminator. So here in Papua, Leone, where this invasive tree, they were introduced by some of our villagers because of the beautiful flower, for flower arrangement and that kind of stuff. But later on, they spread into the rainforest and disrupt our plantation and the ecological system. Next slide. So this is how we do it. Our field crew make sure we have good protection gear. Next slide. And right after we remove the trees, our local farmers will come in and work and start, work on their plantation again. And they're very smart. They also leave some of the native trees around to provide shade. But once the African tulip tree invade an area, yeah, it's a no-go zone, and you can't. If you cut it down, the whole tree will grow back again, even the part of the tree that is separated from the main trunk. Next slide. This is the tamalingi tree. It's probably the most destructive invasive tree in American Samoa. It was once recorded as the fastest growing tree in the world. And the governor's office field crew removed more than 19,000 trees since in the last several years. And that's the map where we document areas where we remove these invasive trees, because it's very important. We have to go back 3 years later and look for the little ones, the seedlings, to make sure they are not repopulate or reinvade our natural rainforest. Next slide. So that's the field crew doing their army thing, and it's a very good exercise. Pretty much most of our field crew love this project than any other project, because they get to hike the mountains and talk to the birds and be closer to the Lord. And there's more photograph. And one thing I like about this invasive tree is that when we retreated them or kill them in the mountains, everybody can see it. And then people ask question, what is that? What are those brown dead skeletons? And the answer is, in the world there's also good guys and bad guys, even in the forest, but we have to take out the bad guys. So it's a good education outreach for our community to help protect our native forests. Because I believe, and some of the pharmaceutical scientists believe, that there's still probably new medicine that is still out there that we haven't, like the thrush in Apia, they're doing good work. One of the research I saw was that they found that the matalafi tree, the one that treated the ma'aiku, it has a lot of important medicinal use. But once you remove tamalingi trees, all those native trees that are suppressed and dominated by this aggressive invasive tree, they will come back. And next slide. So here is we have done this work of invasive tree, invasive species removal for a long time. But earlier this year, I was tasked by the Governor's Chief of Staff to put together a biosecurity leadership team that help bring everybody together, the interagency, agriculture and environment conservation agency, to work on solution to prevent the introduction or of invasive trees to our island. And that's the best way to work on this, is to prevent the introduction of new invasive species and continue working on the ones that are already creating problems. Next slide. I think that's it. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy your afternoon. See if I can help.
I think Tavita is feeling some kind of way because he told me today that he wants to do his haka dance. He wanted to perform for us, but he said wait till tomorrow. I think he likes to keep women waiting. Ali Tavita. Let's give him another round of applause. Thank you, Tavita. Director Lynn? Okay, Human Resources, do we have Deputy? Oh, Director. All right. Our next lunch hour, power hour speaker is Mrs. Lynn Pulo Alaimalo. She's a director of the American Samoa Department of Human Resources, born in Lauli'i to the late Le'ana Tavita Famausili and Nu'uli Tautu Pulo. She has a diverse academic background with an AA in the City of Colleges in Chicago, a Bachelor of Science in Human Resources, and a Master's in Public Administration from University of Phoenix. She pursued an Executive Juris Doctor from Concord Law School and is currently pursuing her doctorate degree in organizational leadership. Please welcome the Director, Lynn Alaimalo.
Thank you. Okay, let me put on my glasses. Thank you so much, Director Lisa and the ODAPM office, for welcoming us here. I was reading through the booklet that they had back there for today's schedule, and something that caught my attention while sitting there was to strengthen disaster resilience in our territory. And then I started looking around and I saw that everyone had trays of foods and all the drinks, and the hospitality is really awesome here. And I just want to thank Director, and I think that basically speaks highly on why I'm here today to speak on human resources. Basically, we're morale building experts. And then I know with food, it's quite an enticement for our workers and employees. And if the morale is not good for our employees, then the work cannot be, there's no solution to the works that we have as far as natural disasters and anything that goes on in our territory. And okay. So greetings and thank you for this great opportunity for Human Resources. All of us here are important resources in the American Samoa government, as well as the private sectors. We here, perhaps as everyone narrowed on the terms and definitions of resilience in our approaches and strategies, and the unthinkable during natural disasters. perhaps I want to share about us as human resources. There's a lot of opportunities that our department has invested in as far as training development and yielding our manual work over to digital works. So within the past months, we invested in grants, and we were able to propose grants to several companies and organizations where we can be able to get equipments like laptops, our MiFis, as well as scanners. As far as we know, at this time, we're still a little bit in the manual works. A lot of our files are still official personnel records that we still physically use today, but we were fortunate enough to invest in scanners where we can be able to digitize all our files, our templates, and records. So we've yielded that positively to assist with, in case there's emergencies or any natural disasters that occurs in American Samoa. Our team has been trained to occupy their time with trainings where they can transition over. We also hold a lot of meetings online. We've also invested in virtual links where we can be able to have meetings, conferences, and trainings, and summits, and conferences, and so forth. So a lot of the transitions and the transformation of electronic records and so forth, we've been able to invest in that, as well as the training development for our office. So we're very fortunate and are thankful that we were able to transform into a lot of resources as human resources, because as we may know, without the human resources, we can't be able to do our job. We can't be able to invest into the work that we do daily. And then during natural disasters, it's hard to communicate when something occurs in American Samoa. Say, for example, if the wires falls or the light poles, they fall on the road and we won't be able to get any Wi-Fi. This is why we have a lot of our equipments that we received during the COVID-19. And so we're very thankful and we're very fortunate that we were able to digitize a lot of our templates online, as well as our electronic forms. And within the past months, we've been able to take care of our cases, our actions, for over 7,000 employees in the American Samoa government. There are many changes and positive achievements that human resources have worked tirelessly to accomplish within the past months. Not only the work has helped us to develop more ideas to better our communication, our staff have been able to be more innovative in finding more approaches to leverage our human capital planning in American Samoa. So those are some of the strategies and the solutions and the problems that we've been able to work with our office to make sure that we have the tools and the skills, as well as the plannings that could better equip our employees, our human resources, and American Samoa government and the territory. So with that being said, I just wanted to lastly add that without our human resources, we are not able to move forward. We are not able to serve the community. We're not able to get all our tasks and our responsibilities done here. But I believe that ODAPM is very understanding of our work here. When there's an emergency, you can hire on the spot, and you have 10 days to turn in your employment clearances. You can also use our programs to communicate with our office so we can be able to assist and help our ODAPM with any issues that they may have as far as personnel and human resources. So I just want to thank Director Lisa and the team for inviting us here. Our department is here to support ODAPM. Should you have any issues as far as resilience, always remember we have the right equipment and the tools to better assist our American Samoa government employees. Thank you so much. Outside.
Wow, awesome. Let's have another round of applause, guys. Ms. Tammy Luttrell and I were having a little chuckle moment here because I just happened to put on these glasses that belong to somebody. So if you lost your reading glasses, I have them here. But it is very great, and I really appreciate your invaluable contribution, Director Lynn. Thank you very much for being here. And our next speaker has traveled so far. He has caught many planes to be here. He is Mr. Franklin Papota, Special Assistant of the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands, or SAIPAN, Homeland Security and Emergency Management Office. After 20 years of service in the Army Reserve and Guam Army National Guard, he rose through the ranks and retired as Lieutenant Colonel. He holds a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and during his law enforcement career at the CNMI Department of Public Safety, he also served as the Deputy Commissioner, and in 2020, he served in the 21st CNMI Legislature as a Congressman in Precinct 1. I am very happy, overjoyed. My Saipan brother is here. Come on, Franklin. Give him a round of applause.
So, talofa, aloha, hafade, si Zeus maasi, Lisa, niyong hami ginin Marianas. Thank you for inviting us from the Marianas. So just a little background about myself too and our Homeland Security. I just started this job in February of this year. So in the beginning, taking over this job, of course, the first question I ask myself is, if there should be a storm tomorrow, am I ready? And do I have the personnel that are going to work together with these challenges? And that's something that I started with, is doing my inventory, and after that, doing my command climate survey, checking with all the staff that I have, and I started the reorganizations. So that's where we're at. We just started this new administration, but we are really tracking and working on some of the progress that we're preparing for if there is a disaster. So the next slide, this slide is in our emergency operation procedures. And I brought this slide up because I also bring it up to our membership in our cabinets. The organizations here is very important that we track in our own. So I started the MAC group, which is the Multi-Agency Coordinating Group, and we started that from our department heads. So we collect them up, we make them sign, they're part of this, and other agencies within our organizations. The other that we have there is, toward the left, is we have the FEMA representative on the island. It's called the FIT person, which is very great to have. He's integrated with us during the planning purposes. And then we have our public information officer and also our deputy. But the public information officer is very critical because they are the people that will be putting out the informations to the media on what's going on. The bottom line, there are 4 boxes there. It's the operations, planning, logistics, and finance. This is the most critical part of all these slides here, because they are the guys that will process your flow chart. These are the guys that will process your documentations. So during my research, here's what happened, finding out in the CNMI, is that Homeland Security is in charge of emergency operations. But when COVID-19 happened, it was a public health emergency. So what happened is the hospital took over and they formed a task force. So the task force, just my research on this one, the task force are not familiar with these forms or the format here, the flow chart. And again, my finding is if we don't follow the flow chart, then we're going to have some issues with FEMA. And that's what's happening with FEMA, because the reimbursement process for the CNMI, some of them are not, fitting with the reimbursement purposes, because after we submit it and they start combing going line by line, we're finding out. But most of the process have to go back to my office, which is Homeland Security, to process the reimbursement through FEMA. But it was actually a task force that was running all the shows in the cinema. So I'm glad, we have the FEMA here, and I'm sharing that information, but this is the flow chart now that we're following, and I always put this up, so we want to make sure that we are tracking the request forms that comes in from your Homeland Security or your Emergency Management Office. And towards the end, I'll talk about that flow chart, but the documentations are very important that you have to get in the right process. So when there is a disaster, which my first one was in May, Typhoon Mauer. But the leadership is very important to be there. And I'm glad that my governor was very supportive of this. Because calling in, we set up the memo, send it out, and calling in the cabinet members. Without the president or the presence of your leadership, the rest of your cabinets might not be there. So it's important that we stand up from the top, bottom on this. The other thing is that we almost stand alone. We stand alone on the island. Nobody's there other than just us. So, I'm glad we have our FEMA representative there. We invited some of our business partners, such as the mobile, the internet services, we brought them in. And again, our public information officers who brought in the media with us. And I was up there standing like what I'm doing right now, and I'm like, who else am I gonna talk to here other than just us on the island? So just like you guys, we need to be prepared, and we need to have our own planning together with the rest of your cabinet staff, because you guys need to work together should something should happen. My only outside agency that I'm working with, and I'm so glad that they were there calling in and we set up this call, is one is from the heavy weather briefings from National Weather Service, but they're not on Saipan, they are on Guam. And also the Joint Region Marianas. The Admiral was there, and we set up briefs, and when he's there, he has a whole list of all his staff listening, and he goes down the list on Guam with his staff. To include, actually, Guam Homeland Security was supposed to be there. Most of the time, they're not there, but I'm glad that I'm able to talk to someone higher than me, talk to someone outside of the CNMI, because, I'm only talking to the same group at all times, but who are my higher-ups to come in and actually help and assist immediately if we should need help. We also have the mutual aid agreement, which is the EMAC for the CNMI. But we did not have the staff trained on this. We are working on this one. We're new on the EMAC. Actually, we had it a couple of years ago, but they never had the training. But right now, we are discussing this EMAC training with FEMA, and also when we go to the NEMA conference next week, I'm bringing in my staff also for this EMAC communications, because we had this with Guam. And during Typhoon Mauer, again, in May, I contacted Guam and I said, if you need anything, let us know, because we're right next door, and we'll line up the things and send it down your way. And the first thing they ask is, are you part of the EMAC? And I said, yes, we are. So we had to fly down, and that was our first time. And Guam, that was their first time to discuss EMAC with the CNMI. But that's something too that we looked at, and it's reimbursable process and procedures through FEMA again. But again, discussing this, you have to have FEMA in your discussions. The other challenges we have is the logistics and supply challenges, and I think it's almost the same like here in Samoa. And these are the facts that we don't have on the island, so we rely heavily on our air and sea transportation. You know? And also, the CNMI and FEMA doesn't have a warehouse. Our warehouse is in Guam. And when we were doing this, we were doing a lot of estimations on this one. How do we get these things over to the CNMI as fast as we can? But we're looking at maybe 3 to 7 days or even more than this if the airport gets compromised or your seaports gets compromised. Just one container falling into the ocean is going to take a while for them to clear it, and by the time they clear it, you need the Coast Guard also to open up the port. So they have to make sure that they send divers out. And again, we cannot do this because the storm just passed, and who knows about the weather and the water situation before you start clearing this. The airport was one of our fastest one that we can clear, which is debris removal, and we line up some personnel on the tarmac and walk down the whole tarmac. But again, this is all a process that we have to do. So we were estimating this, and yes, we did. Rota, which is the island north of Guam, got hit by Typhoon Mauer. And one of the issues that we have was, everything has to come from off island for their supplies, but we managed to got it there as soon as we can because of the planning purposes that we set up. With our feed guy was there that was doing all the requests for the RRF request form was there, and we were doing it before the storm. So again, our CNMI government also does not have enough equipment or any disaster fleet. So for example, our utilities corporation doesn't have enough bucket trucks to go out there and distribute throughout the islands for utility services. So we have to rely again on shipping from our neighbors. So we rely a lot on rental equipment on the islands. So what we did is we also went out to the vendors. So we checked on the mule vendors. So we just had a pre-positioning planning conference where we invited vendors on the island, those that can cater meals. And then we also invited heavy equipment, those that have construction and heavy equipment. These were the only 2 vendors that we invited with our multi-agency coordination group. And we talked about the issues that we'll be facing, challenges that we'll be facing. During the last storm, 3 things that come into that kind of hit us, especially myself as coordinating the whole operations. One is that fear of life or serious injuries. What if we have someone that needs medical assistance right now? Our CNMI or on Saipan, we only have 1 hospital. And with the last meeting with our hospital staff and administrator, I asked them, or we talked about their capability. And if they have 5 in their intensive care unit, they're max. So my next step will have to be to medevac patients out of the island. And our closest place is to Guam. And again, to get them to Guam, after the storm, is that it all depends on the weather, and it all depends if they do have the aircrafts or by boat to send the patients to Guam. So those are the challenges, and I always, we always go for the community first, and that's also, we need to answer them on how do we process this thing. And fear also of knowing the unknown. What is the damage going to be like? Right after, during the storm, we just hunkered down and we just stayed and prayed that this thing, passes us and everybody's safe, But then you're still thinking of what is the damage going to be? How are you going to move on and address that issue on the damage, and how you're going to go and conduct what you need to do in order to help the community. But again, we can only wait and see right after the storm what happens. But then what happened is we do not know what's happening on the island because we don't have that capability. We don't own our own helicopter to fly over the island of Rhoda and see what's going on. What is the damage on the island? So we were just there relying our internet services. We're doing VTC with them. But again, we don't know what's happening. So until we picked up and we managed to get back online. But those are some of the feelings that we have to go through, is that, what's going on right now and how they're doing. The other one, like I said, is the off-island support. We only have off-island support with this, and I talked about a little bit about the mutual agreement with this. We also have some mutual agreement with our utilities company and Guam Utilities Company. So we both share immediately right after the storm. We sent about 12 personnel from CNMI to Guam and assisted in their utility corporation. So that makes it, they're really happy for us sending them. They did the same thing for the CNMI when we had our typhoon. Also, the hospitals, like we have about 5 hospitals in Guam, or 3 major hospitals, and in the CNMI we only have 1. So we want to make sure that we coordinate also with the hospitals in Guam to assist us if we need to send our patients to Guam. So this is one of our best practice that we had, the Unified Command Group. So when this thing happened, I mentioned from the beginning that the leaders got to be there. The Unified Command structure, we centralize all the information in our Emergency Operations Center. And that was the good thing, because when the storm hit us, there's like 2 or 3 other agencies that set up their own EOC too. And we didn't know. The airport had their own EOC. They were monitoring, tracking, and they're not reporting to us. So we did call them in. And we told them we wanted to consolidate and make sure that we all share one information. What happened in the past is the past. This is now the new leadership. So this is how it's going to be happening. So we had the unified command, and that's the thing that really helped us also in coordinations, and it makes our job more efficient. The priority of emergency support functions, we identified four out of that group. They're all important, but we were watching what was the lesson learned on this one in Guam. Communication, when that storm happened in May, it just took down the telephone and the mobile towers. So the community lost the communications. And imagine, when with this stage of our, internet services, almost every house have one. Almost every kid now knows how to use a cell phone. So when we lost that, that community there was really impacted. Because they also have families in the state side, in the CNMI, they can't contact with. So this is one of the things that we identified in our last group, that we want to continue to work with our private sectors on this one and check what of their mitigations and what are their plans if there's another disaster like this, to strengthen their communications. the energy, which is the power, the utilities is one of the things that we again identified, because almost everybody wants their utility back at their house. They need their cell phones or whatever they need to charge, and also they want their air conditioners. I mean, in the Sinamay, it's very hot in Saipan after the storm, and if it comes down, it's very hot. And many of those that are elders or sick and all these things, they're dialysis patients. We hear from them. They want generators from us and all those things, and we cannot afford to provide generators to the homes, but yes, to the shelters. But many of them too don't want to stay in the shelters for that long. So we are working with our utility company there to identify what are their mitigation process also, and what are the things that they still need to work on. The business industry, we find on ESF 18 that the fuel company is one of the things that we face. Another challenge in our disaster is the people getting fuel or gas for their vehicles. And right after the storm, that's what one of our major control that the police have to go is once the gas station is open. Sometimes it takes 5 hours lining up just to get your fuel, and by the time you get up there, you probably have out of gas, or they're about to close, and there's some issues we have. So we want to discuss that also with our business partners, which is Shell and Mobil on the island. Same thing happened in Guam. It took them almost 5 days to really open up the gas station, and they were having a lot of issues. People talk, and we need to listen to them too sometimes and really address, because there are some ways that we could cut this. Instead of 5 days, we can cut it into 3 days probably. So we had our group meetings, and just in this month, the early part of this month, we had a pre-planning meeting with our department heads. And so we were working on our working plan on this one, but some things that we need to improve on is that, can the Sinamay request a dedicated aircraft support, like a C-130 for 7 days for the Sinamay? This is something we're bringing up with our DoD partners on Guam, is that if there is a storm, can we have one? Because we talk with FEMA on these things, we've talked with other guys. We cannot, it's the state that have to lead this. So be you that will have to put this in your plan, and you will have to ask this, because FEMA will not ask that for you, because we ask them. So it's the state that has to request it. We don't have a joint operations center in Saipan right now. We wanted to identify that, because during the last one we don't have. So we need to have a plan on where we're going to all assemble in a bigger facility, because the emergency operations center is an emergency operations center, and the flow chart that I showed you are laid down on the floor. So they have different setup. We're going to establish an alternate communication plan for the internet services. Like Guam, the same telephone company we have in the Sinamay, we have Docomo and IT&E. But there's a company that came down to Guam and helped Guam with their internet services, and that's one of the services that we want to also get in and look at and talk to this company on what they can do for the islands, and what's the ready package they can to expedite the internet services for our community. Rental and LSB boat to transport between islands. And I heard also, that's also part of you guys' request, is that, there are other islands Sinamay comprises of 14 islands, and we have 4 islands. We have 3 of the most inhabited, which is Rota, Tinian, and Saipan. And then we have the other islands in the north of us. But the main one with major populations is Saipan, Tinian, and Rota. But, you know, transporting some of their needs is something that we don't have also capability unless we rented a boat. So we were discussing this with our group on pre-identifying these vendors and put them on our list so that when we need them, we can call them up. But again, that's something that, you know, our government needs to make sure that we work and we process the documents properly. What we need to develop is we need to establish our own staging base. We're working with that right now. FEMA also, we've been discussing, like I said, almost all the stuff we discussed, we involved the FEMA. So we're discussing this with them. They just sent up a group that did a survey on our airport area. So they were there, the IAM group, and we're looking at staging bases there on the Sinamay should something comes up. We wanted to also start identifying our disaster recovery center in the Sinamay, so we can do some work on that. We need to list our inventory preparedness. We don't have it right now. We know we have discussed this, but we don't have it where we can pull it out and say this is the first list that needs to come out. Pre-planning for distributions, we need to work on that one too. The pre-positioning groups, like I said, we just had a meeting, and communications group, we discussed about the capability with a VSAT or a satellite equipment for our own EOC office. We want to also have a medical team to provide medevac requests. So we are discussing this with the National Guard and also with Joint Region Marianas. And we also need one legal team in your group. So if you have a group, I suggest also you do the same thing. One legal person from your Attorney General's office got to be in to expedite the process, and also they need to review it. The damage assistance team, we do have, but again, this is from FEMA coming over, but we also have to start identifying on our own group who are going to be attached to this team. I mentioned about the airport clearance and the Coast Guards. The Sinamay government does not have our own National Guard. So what's our next plan with this? We are just discussing this a couple of weeks ago about establishing a disaster reserve team. In our organizations that I show about the flow chart, we do show that there is a CMS team, which is called a Crisis Strike Management Team. We have that, but most of those guys are like the hazmat team. If there's hazmat, they respond. Even if it's not a disaster, they respond. But a disaster reserve team is one thing that I'm looking at for our own Sinamay group to establish one. And we want to talk also with the National Guard Bureau on this one and FEMA about funding to have a state activation group that if we come up with, we can activate this group. And we've been discussing this with our retirees, you know, because our retirees do receive pension still from our Sinamay government. So if we do activate them, it's easier for us to process their payments because we can just go through. Some of our students that are at the college, we want to bring them in. And as soon as we bring this group in, then we want to start teaching them on going through the process of the disaster and what are their roles, where they're going to be at during a disaster. So this is still in the planning phase, it's still in a discussion mode, but we're looking at establishing a reserve forces for us. And the last, thing they ask us is how large is this group you're looking at? We're looking at maybe 50 to 70 personnel. But once we get that planning on the airport facility comes back, when it comes back to us, then that's when we'll start looking at this, because we're going to start breaking down our groups, and then we can identify how many people we need. And that's the first step that we wanted to do. I mentioned about the pre-positioning planning. We don't know what to call this group. We just say pre-positioning planning meetings, and we brought them in. Hopefully we'll come up with another name with it that much better describe it, but it's a good group that when we brought them in, we identify all these things. We also identified that one of the things that we failed in the past is risk assessment. Risk assessment is something that when you have something that you wanted to put out there and establish it, what is the risk assessment of establishing that? And that's where we fail, because we don't have any risk assessment, and then we come back out and we say, oh, we didn't do this, we didn't do that. And that's one thing that we are working on, and developing the forms to be using a risk assessment. And, establishing that disaster response group, we're looking at comparing that with activating our own government officials. When we did activated our government officials, we pulled them from different agencies. We pulled most of our personnel from the police force and our fire personnel. And what we did is we took them out from their positions. So we weakened their structure. So that's why and they also probably incur more overtime than if we do have our own group. So this is one thing we're still working on, but we were really sure that if we have our disaster group, that it will be less cost for our overtime. We wanted to start doing our tabletop exercises. And that's one of the tasks that have been given. We want to start doing our scenario developments and meeting developments, exercises to do. And then we're going to do our after actions. So I'm working also with Guam, our neighbor, on a typhoon exercise. Next month we are doing an exercise with the Guam National Guard, but it's more towards law enforcement area, where we are going to start doing active shooter exercises. They are coming. We have several meetings with them. We'll have our final planning conference when I get back, and we will do the exercise in November. The last one is, what do we want to do with our own staff? And our this is at the end of our slides, and every time we brief, is that national qualification system. We want everybody to start going to the ICS trainings, to include myself. If you are, then standing up there, you got to go through all these things. And I'm going through it also, taking courses online and just getting into the ICS system. So everyone that works in Homeland Security and Emergency Management, I require them to go through the ICS program and take their courses. And if they don't, we give them timeline to finish it, or there's nothing we can do. But we have to be qualified in order for us to properly respond to any other incidents. And that's all I got. Jesus Masi. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you again, Mr. Babota, all the way from CNMI. Yay! Our next speaker is Dr. Salote Awelua Fanene. Director of Department of Youth and Women's Affairs, DIWA. Her doctorate degree is in organizational leadership, and she served as legislative assistant for the late Congressman Falio Mavaenga Eni Hankin, a youth correctional officer for the public safety and in U.S. Navy. Also a U.S. Navy veteran. Thank you for your service, Director. She's a cryptologic technician operator, co-author of the Research Capacity Strengthening in American Samoa, Fa'avainal Fa'atilengal to Maisa Ilili America Samoa. She's an executive director of the Awelua Family Reading Program, also the co-chair of the Comprehensive Substance Abuse Council Prevention Committee, and a member of the American Samoa Statistical Council. A mighty busy woman you are. Dr. Salote Awelua Fanene. Yay, come on, girl. You got the right color on today.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Director Lisa. We appreciate the invite. So one of the important goals for the Department of Youth and Women's is to make sure that our people are healthy. And we really promote the Governor's Wellness Initiative. So for my Power Hour time, I'm going to call up my staff. Come on down. Kovati Nonu, Lupe, come on down. As they're making their way down, I do want to recognize also that we have a coach here, Mr. Will Spencerberg, called SSY. They do a fabulous, fabulous workout. I hope that some of you here will take time to go down to his gym. And he also does a lot of nutrition programs, so please take advantage of that. So some of you have been sitting a little bit too long. My staff here is Ms. Lupe, Mr. Kovati, Mr. Nonu, and Ms. Viola. They have no idea why they're coming up here, see? All right, so I want you to go out. I want you to pick one person to come up to here. This is Power Hour, okay? So it's on. Go grab a person. Go grab someone. Miss Tammy, we don't need to grab you. Miss Tammy, we heard about you yesterday, how you love to dance. Get on the floor. Oh, yes. This is my Power Hour. All right, let's hit it, DJ. Everybody, get up on the floor. Oh, dappy him. Get up. Come on. Let's do the electric slide. Come on. Come in the middle. Bring them in the middle. Come in the middle. Come on. Time to boogie. Health and wellness. You can't see it. It's electric. You gotta feel it. It's electric. Ooh, it's shocking. It's electric. Take it, I make a with the bubble, let the know the message from the Department of Youth and Women's Affairs is stay healthy. That's how you kick back. Eat well and exercise. We love you all. Thank you so much, Director Lisa. Thank you, Odapian family. You guys are awesome. We will see everybody tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your day. Tayo lava.
Love you. And that is how we work it. You do the electric slide. And you know what? Just right before Director Salota came up, Tammy Luttrell from FEMA, she said, I want to do the electric slide. I want to do the electric slide. And girl, we were sliding. We were sliding, right? It's like God whispers in all of our ears and everything gets aligned. Thank you. Thank you, Director Salote, for that awesome Power Hour dance. Great job. Let's give DIWA Director another round of applause. Malo lava of Thai Director. All right. Our next speaker, poor KCT Beast, having to follow the electric slide. But I am very, don't be nervous, you can slide too. Is Casey here? Ooh, wow. He said hi to me this morning. Yeah, go Casey. So Casey is the hydrology assistant at the American Samoa Power Authority. He is also the UH Water Resources Research Center representative. I'm very happy to see that Mr. Casey, don't hide from me. Casey, KCT Beast, you're up next. Let's give him a round of applause, yay!
Hello, everybody. It's unfortunate that I do have to follow the electric slide because this is going to be a little boring. I work with ASPA and the University of Hawaii's Water Research Center, and what we're going to talk about is real-time flood forecasting systems for American Samoa and how to improve preparedness, public safety, and risk management. This is in conjunction with Dr. Saeed M. I can't say his last name, I apologize, Saeed, and Chris. Saeed would normally be the one that would be doing this presentation, but he could not make it here for today. So hopefully next time you guys can get him and you won't have to suffer through me. So, understanding the urgency. Why do we need reliable real-time flood forecasting? Floods can be a deadly natural hazard that affects American Samoa, causing loss of life and significant economic damage. Flood risks are increasing with more population density near streams and with the added factor of climate change. No reliable flood forecasting system exists for American Samoa's main streams, leaving the territory vulnerable to intense rainfalls. Over the last 2 decades, there have been over $80 million in damages that have been documented over the last 2 decades. Apparently, I already said that. In this project, we're going to focus on the streams that we are currently monitoring. Examples are Whangalu, Whangasa, Waipito, Nuli, Leone. We do have other streams out there that we are monitoring, but we do not have enough data to forecast on them as of yet. Here we go. So the study area. As you can see on the map here, the main streams that we're going to talk about are in central Tutuila. The only stream that's on the west side is Leone, and the one on the east side is Tula, but that is a fairly new stream gauge, and we do not have enough data collected out there. So only 34% of the land here has a slope less than 30%. Residents live in these narrow channels and valleys that are prone to flooding. Located within the South Pacific Convergence Zone, we do get quite a bit of rainfall. The historical impact, as discussed earlier, $80 million over the last 2 decades, multiple losses of life during flooding of heavy rains. So for future projections, the increase in annual rainfall could potentially go up by 14%, and the potential runoff for flooding and surface runoff could go up by 50%. The critical infrastructure at risk for this is transportation facilities, roads, bridges, low-lying areas, terrains that include steep slopes and floodplains. Sea level rise also threatens these areas. Floods, the most common environmental hazard in American Samoa. So what do we do? Well, we collect data, because that's what we do. So throughout the island, we have those 8 stream gauges. These are collecting data at 15-minute intervals along with our weather stations. Those are collecting data at 5-minute intervals. Combining those together, we are able to come up with a data set, and then using a robust machine learning approach, predict flood at various forecast horizons, 1 to 5 hours ahead of time. Eventually, with the more we run it through this model, we'll be able to do 1 to 2 days. But the main thing that's holding us back right now is the lack of data sets. Next. Kind of just went over that, so we're going to skip that one, get out of here early, get into the good stuff. So, these are the models. The blue is the prediction, the red is the actual, let me double check that. Okay, yeah, the blue is the actual prediction, the red is the model that we are running. So as you can see, we don't have as much data as we would like, so our predictions are a little off. As we get more data and run it through this machine, it will be able to predict with higher accuracy. Right now, we're running about 5 years worth of data. Hopefully, by next year, with the combination of USGS and our data, we'll be able to add to this and get more accurate predictions. Again, more slides of the models, the 1 hour ahead, 2 hour ahead. More, and yeah, that's basically it. Hopefully we will be getting more stream gauges out into smaller streams and be able to predict these flood zones. That's it. Thank you, guys.
Yatur pati pati mai. Mo fafifianga mai Casey. Thank you, Casey, very much. That was very informative. And just an FYI, we have copies of all the presentations. We will put together a comprehensive report and include all of the presentations and everyone's work for the summit, because we're going to continue next year and we want to do it better, having a more informed summit. At this time, oh, I'm so excited. Okay, we're going to have our panel discussion here. Is Homeland Security in the house? Okay, Homeland Security was on their way, but I will be calling out the names of our panelists. Our first panelist is Mr. Terry Letuli, Deputy Commissioner of Department of Public Safety, Mr. Sal Poloi of Azteca. Oh, hey, good job. Yeah. Okay, one moment. We have Mr. Alex Baker. He is the TEMCO manager from the American Samoa Department of Homeland Security. Thank you so much, Alex. We have Mr. Terry Letuli, Deputy Commissioner from Public Safety, and Sal Poloi. Oh, Sal, are you here? Sal is the Chief Technology Officer from Azteca. Joey. And we also have Mr. Justin Tuiasopo, the Chief Executive Officer of Blue Sky Communications. Yes, yeah, let's clap for everyone coming up. That's right. And then we have Mr. Tawapai Laupola from the KVZK Office of Public Information. Yes. Are you here, Acting Director? Or, okay. We also have Paunga Joey Cummings. He's the chairman of the Early Alert System. All right. So our topic for the panel discussion today is emergency response coordination. And Mr. Alex Baker, he's the TEMCO manager. TEMCO oversees the Emergency Operations Center, the EOC, where all of our emergency response coordination is conducted. I will now give each and every one of our panelists an opportunity to talk about their role during disaster when they're coordinating emergency response. And I know that Director Lynn, like Malo mentioned today, the importance that to maintain the continuity of government operations by way of our communications and, of course, coordinating emergency response during disasters. After they have their chance to speak, an opportunity is available for quick Q&A for your questions. So hold on of our questions until after they have their turn. All right, let's go.
Good afternoon, Chalapa. Hapadai to Mr. Franklin Bapota. Aloha. And hey, what's up? This is a difficult time since you just had your lunch, but thankfully the previous speakers did electric dance, so I'm pretty sure that we'll be able to get your attention for the probably first 5 minutes. But since it's communication, we're talking about communication, I'll let the other panel members talk about our communication as far as it pertains to natural disasters. But I'd like to take this time to I would be remiss if we were to leave today without thanking our federal partners and local agencies and private sectors, especially Director Alisa Tuatso and our group for setting up this tremendous instructive, knowledgeable information setting. I'm glad that, well, not glad, but because I don't want to get fired, that I was given the opportunity by our commissioner to come in his place. He's kind of busy. He had to attend a Senate House hearing this morning, and to me, this panel is almost like attending a Senate and a House hearing, because we don't know what kind of questions you will be asking. But you know, I've been listening since yesterday and today, and everybody has a story. Everybody has a story. So I'm sitting here trying to think of a good story that has to do with national disaster and communications. Back in 1987, we were hit by Hurricane Tusi. Of course, we were set up and prepared for the coming hurricane. It was on I think it was on a Saturday, and then we were hit by Tusi, but it was just strong winds. all we had was strong winds. The next day, Sunday, the day of our Lord, the Sabbath, all of a sudden the skies were clear, the wind stopped, and we thank the Lord for helping us out. But there was one problem. The problem was we couldn't get communication with the Manu Islands. We couldn't, we tried contacting Manua and there was no answer. So what the government did was they used one of the Crusader ships, which had a helicopter on it. And they kind of went towards the Manu Islands. And when they got to a distance where they can have a helicopter fly out and send back information, they sent the helicopter. The helicopter got there, and there was a devastation. I mean, most of the buildings were down, you know, and they had no forms of communication of notifying Tutuila. So that's when we got that message, we start sending assistance to the Manu Islands. So that story shows you how important communication is to especially natural disasters. We'll be taking questions afterward when we give a chance for the panel to talk about their agencies. As far as our role is as the public safety, and our counterparts that aren't available, which is the search and rescue, we have the similar duties. But when it comes down to natural disasters, Brian stated this morning of WeRo. That's when everybody is a first responder. We kind of take the initiative of going out and helping people out, but then you also observe neighbors helping neighbors out. And we've seen that through time and time again in natural disasters. Even 9/11, people remark of how the city of New York got together and all the surrounding states sending in their people to assist the people in New York. So I'd like to thank you for this opportunity, and hope you have a good day of absorbing all this information that'll help out in natural disasters. Thank you.
Talofa, good afternoon. My name is Alex Baker. I am the TEMCO manager. I work out of the EOC that's right down the street here under the leadership of Director Salmana Bevil. Our primary response and role within natural disasters is we coordinate the EOC, which is the government's official response to any disaster, man-made natural disaster. So our job is to coordinate.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry to interrupt. We have some people that can't hear you, if you don't mind putting up.
Sorry, my job is to basically to coordinate the government's response, to coordinate with our FEMA counterparts, and then to establish the local EOC with all of our liaisons and ASG, NGOs, and other government agencies. So in regards to communication, any of the official documentation, any of the official notifications will also come out of the EOC. So that's just a brief, short synopsis of what we do. So thank you, glad to be here.
Good afternoon. My name is Justin Tuyasusopo. I am with Blue Sky Communications, one of the two internet service providers on island. Before I go any further, I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate Director Lisa Tuato'o as well as her team with the ODAPM for putting together this successful event. I think it's always great to talk about the roles that each of us play when it comes to disaster, before a disaster happens. We normally come together after the fact, but this is good to learn where we can hand off and where we can assist each other. I remember the most recent hurricane on island after Kita happened. Our HFC and ISP crew, the line crew, went out and assisted our local power authority as well as Azteca in terms of clearing the roads so that the cars can go through, and then we can prioritize connectivity with each of the family. Earlier today, we heard from Franklin, CNMI, the hurricane that happened in May, and you know, it's devastating to hear those stories, but one thing that we can take from it is lessons learned. They say that a wise man learns from his own mistakes, but a wiser man learns from what happens to others. And so he mentioned communications as a big piece in terms of the recovery and the response and the time that it took for the local telecommunication companies to get their fiber and their service up and running. And that's something that we're taking heed from and learning from as well. As well in the Pacific Island, we learned from the volcanic eruption in Tonga, and that was also devastating. That broke the undersea fiber cable that forced them to go into satellite redundancy. And so, you know, the question we ask ourselves is, are we ready for that type of disaster, and what's our response time like to be able to connect the community not only within our territory but also outside of the territory. We've had visits from FEMA to try to talk about the infrastructure we have in place. One of the redundancy plans we have is a connectivity between us and Samoa via the TUI or the American Samoa cable. There's limited capacity on that, but there's definitely an option to get communication out if the main Hawaii cable breaks. I see my friend here has a very fancy machine outside that looks like it shoots to the outer space, and so as long as there's redundancy for our people, I think that's a good thing, right? We all have to work together as a team to be able to provide communication to our island. You know, one thing that I'm learning now is that the generation we have today, power is the same thing as internet. So internet is kind of like a utility. And so without internet, people go crazy. I mean, I know that's how some households kind of control their homework time. And so it's very interesting to see that the small role that we play can have major impacts. And so it's a big responsibility that we have to uphold and work together with partners such as the DHS in terms of their EOC communication, so that we're all talking the same talk, as well as the commissioner and deputy commissioner at DPS to be able to do crowd control. Because one thing that I noticed, and I may be going over time with my introduction, but I'll end after this. One thing that I've noticed is as soon as the word goes out via our SMS broadcasting, say for example the most recent tsunami warning scare, as soon as that notice went out, you see families hopping on the road, they're driving on the road, and so you know, everyone on this table plays a role in it, and everybody in this room, but we noticed that, you know, we need to do a lot of traffic control. We noticed that we needed to have timely response, time-stamped on our SMSs. So there's definitely a lot of lesson learned from it, but one thing is for sure is that together we can definitely accomplish anything and be prepared for when something does happen. Thank you very much.
Hello. Yeah, talofa lava, and hello again. My name is Fasala Aungafa. Friends call me Sal or Sala for short. as do all the Azteca staff. I do apologize. CEO Chuck Leota had to depart for another critical business matter, and he put me in his seat. Hopefully I can match up to what he described earlier in his presentation. CEO Justin mentioned, having backups and cable breaks and so forth. We unfortunately are experiencing today a cable break, submarine cable, between this main island, Tutuila, and the outer islands of Manua. So we had to turn our attention to wireless technology to connect our families and friends in Manua, and therefore offer them the services that we receive here in the main island. We do manage the two of the cables that terminate here into Tutuila, one being the American Samoa cable that CEO Justin mentioned. The other is the Azteca Hawaii cable. That cable, as you all know from the presentation, connects American Samoa to Hawaii and to the West Coast in Oregon, Pacific City, Oregon, as well as soon to come, enabling connectivity to New Zealand and Australia towards the south. So it's very critical that we look into backing up that system in case of disasters, whether it be man-made or natural. There needs to be backup to the cable system. For the Manua cable, we are looking to repair that cable, but these things require funding, and Azteca is currently in the process of funding that initiative to get real broadband services back to the Manua people. I think the panel has covered pretty much everything that we experience here in American Samoa in the past, so I'm not going to go back there, but I'm happy to take any questions as to the panel that you all might have. Thank you.
We give you all an opportunity if you have any questions for our panelists. Well, disasters, do we have anyone? Okay, I don't see anyone, but I will say this: disasters can happen at any time, and our emergency response community are unable to perform their duties or reach out to the far back villages or anywhere you are without great communications or connectivity during times of disasters. And that's why it's very important. Communications is one of Homeland Security's priority and FEMA, and we put in our applications for equipment to make sure that there's connectivity and that help is there in a timely manner during disasters. And that's what we're really trying to say here. There are some dead spots along the territories within the islands, and our experts here, they know where those dead spots are. And with the cable connectivity, with Blue Sky here, and I know DPS, when lines are down during disaster, the police officers actually get on their motorbikes and use the speaker or any type of way to alert the residents of American Samoa in the villages. So DPS is instrumental even during the 2009 tsunami when they helped out with alerting the villages of the tsunami. And I know that Alex at EOC, we need to have really great equipment. Those are one of our challenges. But there is an emergency operations plan, and that's what they keeps them together to work on their emergency response before, during, and after disasters. Okay, we have a question from Mr. Will Spitzenberg of PO Consulting.
Talofa, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you very much to our panelists today for discussion on communication. My question is, I know this is in the plan, but can you talk about how we're using our village system to get the word out, like the pulenu'u and ringing the bell? For some reason, like sometimes, like you talk about when the internet is down and the phones aren't working, how are we incorporating in this communication during this time, you know, in the history of our people? We've always had the village system involved, as well as the matais, and then somebody goes out and rings the bell if there's an emergency. Like, how can we incorporate? Can you talk more about how we're incorporating that in this communication process?
Thank you very much for the question. Before Homeland Security came out with the sirens, that was one way of communicating to the people, was using the church bells, the ringing of the church bells. I think throughout the years, they've been improving that method. We'll never do away with that method because we know it works. So I think one of the things that they set up with the Pulenu'u, or the mayor of each village, was to give them two-way radios. And I think it was the Homeland Security that did that in coordination with the Samoan Affairs. So they're giving you these radios that when there's a impending natural disaster, they are to radio each Pulenu'u, or mayor. And then they're responsible for each village to make sure that each congregation or church in the village is to sound out the bells. And also through the public awareness of some of our agencies with Samoan Affair, they've been taught that utilize the village police, which is the Aumanga. And they're in coordinating with the Pulenu'u, do go out and assist the villages, and as far as tsunami up in the higher ground. That's one way of alerting the villages, and that doesn't stop us from the Homeland Security providing the sirens, and then of course our Azteca and Blue Sky notify them on the phones with the alert, and that doesn't also stop our first responders, as far as the police, the fire, and the search and rescue teams, even EMS, to head out to the villages and use their PAs to notify people of the upcoming disaster. So I hope that answers your question, sir.
Just to add on to that, what Mr. Spitzenberg is talking about is part of the contingency plan that we have. So we work very closely with Samoan Affairs and the Pulenu'u. No system is perfect, and we know that. So having those redundancies built in, and a lot more people are, their reaction time will probably be better with that familiar ringing of the bell. So I know in Leone, a lot of times when there are these impending possible disasters, they don't wait for us anymore. Leone will ring that bell and will evacuate the coastal village up to higher ground. So that is a part of the contingency plan. It's a notification out to DPS. DPS will then also use their police units to notify those coastal villages that there is a possible impending event, and we need you to get to higher ground. But that contingency plan is part of our outreach to the community and our partnership with Samoan Affairs.
believe Will Spitzenberg, his question was, how do we incorporate the ringing of the bell? It's a system of redundancy. It's redundant because we can never rely on the siren or anything that deals with today's communications, or if communication is interrupted during disasters, satellites are down, we always go back to our bell system. It has been credited in saving lives in the people of Poloa during the disaster, the tsunami. So that's why the village mayor from Poloa has been recognized by the National NDPTC in Hawaii. So the ringing of the bell is a redundant system that has been included in TEMCO and Homeland Security's outreach out to the villages that do not depend on the bell, on the siren. If there are indicators. If you know that there's a strong earthquake, for example, you look at the ocean, the water's receding, do not wait for the siren. You immediately go inland or to the mountains. And that's why the bells, and including our Samoan Affairs village mayors, are very important. So they have a continuous, robust awareness by the TEMCO team with the village mayors just to keep them refreshed, because we change village mayors in 2 or 3 years, that there is the bell system, because the village mayors are actually the first responders in each villages, and they're the ones that will assist the villages and villagers in their evacuation during disasters. So that's why it has how you incorporate the bell system into the communications system during disasters or before. I hope that answers. Anyone? I see Terry's burning to say something. Oh, we have a question from Lipea. Let's go, Lipea. Oh, sorry, it's Miss Renee Spain.
Aloha. Question for, so American Red Cross pushes a lot of preparedness programs out. What kinds of preparedness programs should we be pushing out about communications to the community, to the villages, so that they can be better prepared, better aware of what their vulnerabilities are and how they can possibly resolve it? Joey mentioned yesterday about purchasing a specific radio. Is there anything else that we should be pushing out to the communities during our education programs?
I think the message that we want to push out to the public is redundancy. So I know Joey talked about the NOAA weather radios. Those are available for purchase, I believe, at ACE. Tool Shop has them, and then I think the PX also has them. But the message that you want to send out to the residents is, even within your own homes, you need a redundancy to your plan. All right, so cell phones, making sure that your cell phones are charged, having extra batteries. Again, if the power is going to go out, your cell phone is only going to be good for so many hours, right? Power banks, anything that you can do to create a stronger communication system, knowing that our friends at Blue Sky and Astica are going to get our lines up and running as soon as possible. Doesn't matter then if your phone is dead. So I think those are the messages that you want to, it's backups to your backups. And so even with us at the EOC, we have ASPA's main power, then we have our generators, and then we have a backup generator that we can just run, small kind of communications off of. So that would be, in my opinion, the message that you want to send. It's backing up your backups. Thank you.
I asked him about what he said about the weather radio, and I said I looked up the Amazon, and I said there are weather radios there, and one of them has a handcrafted battery charger. Yeah. So he said recommended that, and he also recommended a certain brand, two brands actually, but the other one I forget now, Midland. But he was saying, there are many types, but the one that you use is the best radio.
Yeah, I agree on that. Change your batteries out.
It's very good to hear that it's good to have those backups. At the same time, we would like to see something that will happen right at the moment of the incident. Children, parents, even grandparents, those who are bedridden, probably nowadays got cell phone of their own. My question is there any chance that we can set up a app that we can encourage the community to lock in that app? When anything happens, the phone will go off a signal or sound that will inform them, yes, this is a signal, this is a sound, so that everybody at that same moment in time will know there is a situation. Thank you.
I can speak to that, and then I'll pass it on to Sal and Justin. So right now, Homeland Security is rolling out their iPause system. The iPause is an early warning system. It's capable of being broadcast over cell phones, radios, TVs, and what this does is, in the event of a disaster or impending disaster, we can send out a message over your phone, and that's run through both Blue Sky and Astica, and we can use these for weather. It functions as an Amber Alert, so if there's a missing child somewhere, we can contact the public. We are currently still in the testing phase, but that's again a backup and a redundancy to the plans that we have. And then I know Joey was here yesterday talking about the EAS. That's another functional system that we can broadcast through radio and TV for messages of that sort. So.
I'll add a little bit to that. The question was whether there's an app that we could install on our phones to be able to communicate when there's an emergency. The answer is there's an app for anything. The problem is getting the buy-in from the community to download apps is something that is very hard to do. And I could speak on behalf of our side. As we're upgrading our system, we have to go away from the star 888#, and so it's getting the push, like our community's pushing back from downloading an app, and so app-based solution is something that is very difficult to roll out. The good news is that federal government, local governments, a lot of partners have come together and figure out a solution. So on island we have basically two based. One is EAS, as Baker had mentioned. It's Emergency Alert System. It's a binder this thick that has responsibilities for each organization, including the NOAA weather station, the radio stations, ourselves here at the communication side of things. But we also have the most recent iPause. I don't really know what iPause stand for, but basically, if you think of Amber Alerts off island that takes over your phone and makes the ee-haw sound, and then there's a notice that goes on your phone. So that's essentially, from a communication standpoint, we call that the wireless emergency alert system. So different acronyms basically meaning the same thing, but this way it gets pushed, the message gets pushed from the Department of Health or the Department of Homeland Security to be able to communicate this without having a human interaction in between that delays the timeline of this going out, right? So it's the same thing that would initiate the siren system that goes out. So trying to get all the partners into the same room to be able to push this one message, all say the same thing, and not have the text message from an Astica phone say one thing thing in a text message. So it's standardizing the message, and then the timeline of it goes out is fairly quickly so that people can read the message and respond to it. And I guess this can go back to the original question in terms of what message you guys can push out in terms of Red Cross outreach. I know DHS does a lot of outreach programs. They have signs that are out there to be able to tell people where is a safe zone, where is not a safe zone. But I think one thing that you guys are already doing at Red Cross is having the backpacks ready for when an emergency does happen, no matter what emergency that is. So you can have power banks in there, you could have water, canned food, but just have bags ready. Because if every family has an emergency plan in place, no matter where they're at during the day, like say for example, we're here today and students, your kids are in school, you educate your kids, when this happens, this is what you do. And when this happens, here's where I'm at, this is what I do. And then we can reconvene afterwards. Because the panic is something that we cannot stop when the time happens. And so what app that we put down or emergency alert system, that's going to further trigger that, right? So I think the work of outreach definitely helps keep the general public calm and understand that here's what I need to do when this happens, right? Thank you.
Just to add, there are existing apps, free apps, FEMA, NOAA, the weather station. They all include American Samoa in their app. Unfortunately, they don't send out the alerts. It's up to the, for example, the national weather station, the local weather station, to send those emails out. But you can get those free apps from all these federal agencies, and you can, when you know there's a storm coming, you can log in there and find out what the status is for American Samoa. Creating an app from a carrier's perspective, CEO Justin talked briefly about it. The thing is that if Azteca were to create the app, then it'll be just the Azteca customers getting those alerts. And I would think the same on the Blue Sky side. So I think a community app would probably have to come from the government, via Homeland Security or other agencies. Then they would mandate Azteca and Blue Sky to send these out, similar to what's happening today when there is a disaster coming, expected. The governor activates the Emergency Operations Center, the EOC, at the Homeland Security. They are the ones who tell us, the carriers, when to send out the message and what to send out. If you all recall, a couple years back in Hawaii, in the state of Hawaii, there was a scare, a nuclear scare, because the wrong SMS was sent out, the wrong WIA alert was sent out, so everybody was scrambling to hide somewhere. But and that's the control that has to happen from the local government, so that the carriers don't just send out what they wish at one time. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Director, and thank you, panelists. I just wanted to add the definition for your acronym of IPAWS. FEMA just celebrated our 10 years of the Integrated Public Alert and Warning System, and the intent is to save lives and to send the alert message through wireless communications, radio, and TV. And just wanted to let everyone know we're going to be sending out a test message next Wednesday on October 4th. So I believe we had a speaker that gave us an illustration. He held up his phone and let you hear exactly what would be the tone that would be coming across for that emergency alert and warning test.
Thank you for that.
This is Michael, also with FEMA. I just want to say, if you want to visit us here at our table in the corner, we have brochures about the iPause right here, as well as about the FEMA app that you can download, which you can put in your zip code here in American Samoa, and it will relay the National Weather Service alerts to your phone if you download that app. So stop by our table.
That was a nice plug.
System did was you cannot enter a building if you did not have the app. So maybe the government say you cannot enter a government building if you don't have an app. That's how to implement it, I think.
Yeah, thank you for that. There's definitely difficulties in trying to get buy-in from people to download apps, but at the end of the day, we can't really force the general public to do that. I mean, we've learned. I know the government definitely can do that kind of stuff, but there's one thing that we have to stay away from is shoving something to the general public. It makes it very difficult for people to accept it. But one thing that the outreach can do is to sell the benefits of what the app can do, but we don't need an app because we have the alert system that is the iPause that Booth has. So we've got the backups to the backups to the backups. Thank you.
I think one of the things for the iPause, one of the things, you don't have a choice. If it's an actually emergency event, your phone is going to ring. The siren will go off. You will hear that go off. So it helps in sort of closing that gap between wanting to form an app to having that as again a redundancy in your system.
Technically, there is a choice. You can go around without a phone, and then you don't need to hear it.
I stand corrected. Thank you.
On our island too, we do have, I believe, about 10% of our subscribers who still have flip phones. So they're not smartphones that has the capability to push out a system. But thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, Lipian.
Yeah, just a final follow-up and why I asked the question. Probably 90% of us here got a good idea of what happened in Lahaina, that fire. It didn't take an hour or two to get to 1/3 of the community. And then, about an hour, the whole community was cut by fire. Children, the elderly, even business and all those were the good, the wealthy, and the happiest. My question is, what is your recommendation? I know FEMA is helping us, putting in place, will support us, whatever decision you make. Would you like a legislated law to mandate a certain system? Then when something happens, all your apps, all your system will activate at the same second. Yes or no? Thank you.
So from Homeland Security, that's essentially what our iPods and the EAS are going to do. As long as you have a smartphone, once that message is disseminated out from Homeland Security, everybody, if there was a pending disaster, everybody in this room, their phone would be going off right now. You would all get that alert. with the smartphone. Your flip phones, I'm sorry, but it's time to upgrade in that sense. But I don't believe it's going to require a mandate or law. It's again just the partnerships here, building that capacity, and then continuing to create the backups and the redundancies, and then just ensuring that the systems are working. And then that's why we do the nationwide IPAWS test. ASDHS will start doing more of their a monthly test for the EAS. We do test monthly for the EAS. It's every Wednesday. And then the IPAWS will start to be incorporated into that testing as well. So for the test, just FYI, you have to opt into the test. So if you, I think Joey might have covered that. If you go onto like your iPhone or your smartphone and the settings and notifications, you go in there, then you can turn on the notifications to receive the test messages. So you have an option for that. For an actual event, as long as your cell phone is the battery's on, I don't even think it has to be connected to a network. Right? It'll pick up the alert message. So.
Just want to add from a telecommunications standpoint, we are essentially mandated by FCC to be able to. So from a mandate standpoint, we are, they may not, but we as a company has to have the infrastructure to be able to deliver the system. And if we don't, we have to provide a plan to FCC to indicate what timeline we have to do, what do we need to be able to deliver this. It's not a choice for us. That's one thing that is not a choice. Thank you.
And if you're an Azteca customer, you would have received these test alerts every month. Since September 2022, we were certified by FCC with WIA. So yeah, October 4th, next week, will be the next test. So I expect that. Just one last thing, your phone does need to be up. There is no queue for the message, so when you turn your phone back on and you miss the message, you're going to miss it.
Well, there you have it. This is exactly why we wanted to have this panel with the emergency response coordination. I know a lot of great work is done there, but it's fragmented and it's in isolation with each other. And this is really great that we have our local and federal partners, and this is why we're here, so we can enhance our collaboration and we would have a more concerted approach. We're going to be including our lessons learned and the challenges. I'm sure that they have a lot of challenges. No one thinks about communication and connectivity unless it's not there. And especially during disasters, when communication is interrupted, everyone panics. We have a panic Titanic on our islands, and everybody wants to call everybody and say, oh, my chicken, what happened to my kids? Did they evacuate to the right place? Do not call or use the telephone during disasters. Leave it for the emergency response community to coordinate the response efforts. And that's what we're here. TEMCO has done a great job. They've given out more than 5,000 NOAA weather radios to government leadership. When they go out into their outreach, they have done that. Red Cross had asked what types of programs. If there is a program that will fund 10,000 NOAA weather radios, bring them on, sister. Bring them, because we're going to need all those NOAA weather radios again. Even the NOAA weather radios, they operate on batteries, so even if it's not working or it's not plugged in, during disasters, when we need the notification, it automatically beeps and goes on and gets you to pay attention. That's why I really appreciate, and I hand-selected our panelists because I know they come with a wealth of information. They're subject matter experts in their own field, and we cannot thank you enough for being part of our discussion today and sharing and imparting your knowledge. And so we also know that we don't need a legislation. There's already one from FCC that we need to have. I hope that the panelists have answered all of your questions. There they're going to be around. Well, actually, they're all here on island. So please make time to visit them, make a recommendation. Ask them if there's anything that they might need from your end. Continue the communication from here on forward. We also have, you guys need to utilize our federal partners while they're here. Talk to them, exchange business cards. Please come network and see how they can help you in your communication. Sal, I know that you need, Azteca needs a lot of equipment. I know we can help Justin out. Yeah, and even DPS and Temco at EOC. So please come to Michael Kern's table, spin the FEMA wheel, and find out how they can help out, download their apps. Other than that, I just want to thank you very much for being part of our, give everyone a great hand of applause. Thank you once again, everyone, for being on the panel.
On behalf of our panel, I'd like to thank you for the questions. There was one question I was waiting for somebody to ask, and it has something to do with the bells. What would happen if it was a Sunday morning between 8 and 9 in the morning when everybody's going to church and the bells start ringing? We ring the bells so they can go to church. So no worries. We still have our first responders out there broadcasting on the PAs, and Homeland Security's got their sirens, and of course our agencies with Azteca and the Blue Sky will be using the cell phones to alert the people. So no worries, we've got you covered.
May I answer the question?
I'm sorry.
May I answer the question? I'm a Catholic priest, so I think I know how to answer the question. So if it's at 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock when there is a mass going on and there is a terrible disaster, then the answer is the priest should let all people go. You know why? Because in scriptures it says, Jesus Christ said, I am here to save lives. Liturgy is not that important.
I don't know if this is a question or a suggestion, but is there a particular way that you could ring the bell for it is time to go to church or it is time for an emergency? And a church is not a bad place to be during an emergency.
So to answer that question, if any point, Sunday morning, Sunday night, if you just hear that one continuous ringing, it's just ring, 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 ring. Some poor guy is out there at the village bell. He's going to sacrifice himself. Please let's make use of his sacrifice. It's just a continuous single ringing of the bell. It'll just go on and on until he or she gets tired, and that'll be the bell. Church bells are a little different. It's the one or two. So we're familiar with that. The village saw is a different bell. So if you're here and you hear that, please head for higher ground.
Yes. And that is exactly why Temco has done a great job with their outreach. When you ring the bell during disaster, you go ding, 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 until everyone's out of their house. But when you go to church, they have a soft way to ring the bell, and that's what Alex is saying. And that's what I'm saying. When they come out to your villages, please go to the guest house where they have the Temco's outreach. You will learn a lot from them. Thank you once again, guys, unless someone has a question. Yes. Thank you very much for being here. And I know the second group of panelists are just dying to come up here because I see them moving in their chairs and like, oh, come on guys, hurry up. But here are our panelists for our infrastructure rebuild during recovery. We have Mr. Ben Reeder from U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. He's a deputy chief. Yeah, give him a hand. And then we also have Mrs. Faleocina Voigt, director of American Samoa Department of Public Works. And of course, Miss Petty Matila, Director of the American Samoa Department of Commerce. She's here to talk about our PNRS process that oversees the land use permit in the aftermath of disasters. And we also have Mr. William Spitzenberg. He is the Chief Engineer of PIO Consultants, and he's also our contractor for the building codes, updating the building code that's funded by FEMA. And Mr. Ryan Tuato'o, he's Acting Executive Director of ASPA. Critical infrastructure. We need water and electricity. Like I said, nobody ever thinks of these things and these services unless they're interrupted. I will give the panelists an opportunity to share with us.
Okay, check, check. Hey, Talofa, this is Ben Rader with the Army Corps. Really, this session, I was planning to learn from the experts here, the local experts who know their home, obviously, and from the Army Corps' perspective, I would love to engage and hear the questions and see where it takes my mind, but as far as this panel, yeah, I don't have a whole lot to offer for opening words, so I will pass it to Director Voigt here, and I'm the note taker. I have my pen and paper, and I'm learning, so teach me, teachers.
Malo Ben. I know everyone has participated in the training that I conducted, so there's my presentation. Everyone has the knowledge, so I don't need to repeat. I would like to call upon Catherine, Angelica. Is Kelly here? Kelly, are you in the house? Okay, please stand. Angelica, Catherine, and Kelly. Okay. We'll see who listened to the presentation. Okay, a question for Catherine. Catherine, what permits does DPW issue?
A lot of the infrastructure permits.
You want to?
Public Works.
Catherine, Angelica, you want to try?
I'm sorry, I do not know.
Is Kelly in the house? Okay, I'll ask Casey. Casey, I'm not going to call upon you, William and you, because I know. Casey, do you know the permits that Public Works issue? Oh, this is very, very not good. Anyone from the ground floor that listened in to the presentation want to try? Who said that? Brian. Yeah, right. Yeah, building permits. Okay, you two, please stand. You didn't get the correct answer. You stand. Casey, stand, please. Okay, I have 3 questions, so that was the first one. So the second question, name an infrastructure that DPW is responsible for.
Roads.
Who said that?
I did.
Okay, you may sit. Okay, Catherine and Casey. Oh, I'm sorry, Angelica and Casey. One more. So what roles do DPW perform during disaster response? Any role?
Coordination. Coordination?
Coordination for? Do you have the ESF that was mentioned? Do you know the ESF that was mentioned? That DPW is a lead.
One.
Hey, Angelica, Catherine.
I have a lifeline.
See, you shouldn't listen, so that's incorrect. It wasn't ESF 1. Casey, you want to try? Roads, clearing roads. Yay, you're lucky. You want to try again the ESF number? 1 is not the answer?
I do not know.
Okay, it was ESF 3, which is construction and engineering, or engineering. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your participation. So basically, DPW's role, day-to-day operations, we have Civil Highway Division and also Architectural Engineering Division. So many engineering services pertaining to design and construction management, to roads and public facilities. Now, other public buildings, semi-autonomous agencies like ASPA, ASTCA, the LBJ, they are responsible for their own infrastructure as far as buildings on their area, in their area. So we're responsible for providing engineering services from planning to surveying to designing, bidding, and construction. Design to approve codes and requirements. We also acquire, make sure that we have the permits, both local and federal, and most of the projects that we deal with as far as permits, if we do shoreline projects, improvements, or any work in the streams, that will require an Army Corps permit or a US EPA Section 404, I believe. And our local permits, Director Petty will touch base on that as well, will be for our land use permit. Procurement rules supposed to be met, both making sure that the acquisition of services or contractors are vetted through procurements. We do allow sole source. I know federal FEMA mentioned, I think it was during Angelica's presentation as well, sole source, though that there were 5 items, I think, that can be waived, sole source for FEMA requirements. Now, we also issue building permit. Now, a building permit, we require a land use permit to make sure that you have a land use permit before your plans are reviewed and approved, and then the building permit would be issued. We also provide building inspections on those permits once they're approved. We provide technical assistance. Oftentimes, we get calls from the public. They want us to come out and do an assessment, and this is also coordinated through TEMCO and Homeland Security, because mainly public works, our services is supposed to be mainly for public government facility. Anything outside of that, we can help provide that technical assistance. But as far as the government going in and do the design for personal or residential or outside of non-government, that's not within our scope. We also provide transportation services. We have a transit division, and this is basically funded under the Federal Transit Administration of the US DOT, where we provide transportation services to the elderly and people with special needs. We also manage an ASG fuel stations, both here in Tutuila and Manua. Manua Islands in To'u and Olosenga, Ofu, they have one each. So a total of 3 gas stations. Now, during the disaster, so imagine, so that's our day-to-day. That's what we do every day, normal. So we do a lot of right now, we do a lot of development projects, design for school buildings, a lot of projects under the school, and we're also able to tap into consultants that are available on island to help design some of these projects and provide the construction management as well. So that's a plus as far as helping us move projects and managing depending on the workload. Now for the role during a disaster, as I mentioned, ESF number, Angelica? Number 3. So under the TEO, or Territorial Emergency Operation Plan, DPW is the lead agency for emergency support function, ESF number 3. namely construction engineering. I think our counterpart at the federal level is that Army Corps? Is that you?
Maybe.
You got to say yes.
Okay, yes.
Okay. So the counterpart from the federal is the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So what do we do under that? Basically, we want to make sure the roads are cleared of debris for easy access for the first responders and emergency team. We want to make sure that we have the equipment and manpower available and ready to use to dispatch. So this is where we tap into the pool or the equipment pools from private contractors as well. We conduct evaluations and damage assessments and reports, engineering services, emergency contracting, emergency repairs to support response and recovery initiatives. We also tap into private consultants to help with the workload in providing services in designing and construction management. Then after the emergency response phase, we go into the recovery and rebuild. That's where the project development comes in. We get more time to develop that project. So again, that's where you come in, the process as far as making sure you have your plan and specs in place, your permits, before you go out to bid to get a contractor. So under emergency, we mainly get a lot of this assistance federally funded through FEMA program, public assistance for government or public infrastructure, and also through federal highway if it's a road, that are on the system, federal highway system, under their emergency relief program. So that's separate or in addition to their normal allocation that we get from federal highway annually. So once the EOC is activated, depending on the magnitude, how big the disaster, DPW activates 3 posts to respond from, one in the west area, the central, and then in the eastern end. So checklist for manning these posts, we make sure that there's a list of heavy equipment and tools that will be assigned to these posts, and the equipment are the right equipment, they're good, the conditions, they're in good conditions, and they're readily available. We want to make sure that we have the right communication equipment as well in place for the responders. The phones and radios are available and working. Manpower management, we want to make sure that we have the right staff, the know-how, and the know-what. So they're out there, they know what they're going to do, and they know how to carry out the tasks. We want to make sure that these posts also have the reporting forms, because these forms will be a form of data that we need, and so when we apply for FEMA money, we have some record or data document. We want to make sure that we have a transportation vehicles in good condition and working for the crew to transport the crew in and out. And a feeding plan. We want to make sure that the staff will be well fed. So of all that, I just want to touch a little bit on my experience on some of the disasters that I was involved in. I started working in public works in 1991, and behold, a huge Hurricane Bell that was Category 5, I believe, lasted about 3 or 4 days. The eye actually went over the island, past the island. And that's the first the Army Corps, I guess, through FEMA. FEMA was activated here, and Army Corps was, I guess, hired, but the Public Works staff was assigned to work as a state representative to work with the federal developing and writing up public worksheets for the public assistance program. And that's the first time I've been to was during the FEMA, the Hurricane Bell. So there was Hurricane Bell in 1991, and then I remember a 2003 flooding if you recall that there was people also lost lives in Pango area. It was mainly an isolated, it was mainly heavily impacted in the Pango area, Whangatongo and Pango area. And then there was Hurricane Heta in 2004 and Hurricane Olaf in 2005. And then the earthquake and tsunami in 2009. So these were major, the 2009 tsunami, earthquake, and the Hurricane Val, those were major disaster. And imagine the resources, so the impact on the resources that we have to seek assistance outside of American Samoa and outside of the government as far as our private sectors. And it was the tsunami event that I don't know if some of the FEMA folks, this was the first time a private property debris removal was engaged. And that was a totally different process, because if you can recall, if some of us recall, there were boats on the road, on land, vehicles everywhere. I mean, it was, and we were able to, thank you for FEMA that was able to allow us to do meaning go onto private property and collect all the debris. And then there was Kita in 2018, I think that's and the king tides or high tides in 2021. So my takeaway in all of that is, you get exposed to all these different processes or procedures, and you gain the knowledge. So it's very important that this is put into standard operation plans or procedures for staff, right, to sustain, because I may not be here, we come and go, but it's very important that we get trained on these knowledge and put it in paper and get trained on these SOPs. So I think I pretty much said that. Okay, thank you. And questions, if you have any questions, thank you very much for your questions and take them with you. Outside.
All right, well, I guess it's my turn now, and I'd like to say talofa to our federal partners and as well as our local agency partners here today. You're all probably wondering, what does the Department of Commerce have to do with disaster resilience? Well, I'm here to share with you briefly, but I'm going to try to highlight as much as I can because it's a lot of information to absorb. So I'm going to try to break it down and make it easier for you so you can be, maybe later on, we can be potential partners as a result of the information that I'm about to share. So our mission at Department of Commerce is to improve the quality of life in American Samoa, not only through economic development, but also through sustainable resource management. We take our responsibility for resource management very seriously. And part of our mandate is under the coastal management laws. And if this is your first time in American Samoa, FYI, American Samoa as an entire island is a coastal zone community. We are a coastal community. Simply, that's what we are described as. That means it covers from the mountaintops all the way to 3 nautical miles out at sea. So we basically cover the entire island through coastal management. And how do we do this? We actively do this by implementing the land use permitting system. And the governing body or the interagency group that gets to be part of this land use permitting system is known as the Project Notification Review System Board, or PNRS Board for short.
So the land use permit process is an interagency review process. I just want to put it out there that Department of Commerce is the leading facilitating agency, but all 8 members of this board have the exact same rights or level of power in this interagency body. So oftentimes people think as soon as you hear land use permit, you immediately think Department of Commerce, but not knowing there's a whole other lineup of agencies that we work closely with. So our critical role through PNRS for disaster resilience is given the impacts of climate change in American Samoa, the impacts are very real and they're very threatening too. So we make sure through the land use permitting process, we get to review what goes into the ground. Basically, the land use permitting process is an environmental review process. We make sure that anything that's built on island does not have a major environmental impact. Even if there's potential environmental impacts, we have to make sure it's minimized. One of the things that we have to keep in mind is where do we strike a balance between man-made development and natural resource management. So it's a very difficult task that's given to 8 different agencies to come together and review a specific project. And through the land use permitting process, it doesn't matter if this is a government-funded project or a private-funded project. Even Faliosina's projects come through the same process just as any other, it could be a new home that's being proposed to be built. So one of the good examples of how we responded as a PNRS board was during GITA in 2018, we activated a one-stop shop process. When FEMA came down and all the key federal partners were identified, everybody was deployed to the youth center in Pangopango, and that's where we deployed our PNRS members to work alongside our federal partners. So that made the process easier, especially for applicants or families whose homes were severely devastated or damaged as a result of that disaster. So it made the process easier, and it helped everybody expedite everything that needed to be done. We were also able to waive the fees during the state of emergency. Another good example was during the COVID-19 shutdown. Even though it was a public health state of emergency, but we also managed to utilize the PNRS process to continue approving some of the permits that we needed to put through. For example, making sure that people's homes continue to get electricity and water, because that's also part of our mandate under the land use permitting process. Even during the pandemic, we managed to upgrade our website so that we could upload all the applications that people would need just to go online, download them, and understand what's required of them to provide when they submit their land use permit applications. So we've been trying to be creative all along. For many, many years, this system has been on board. But one of the most important tools that we've been relying on lately is the use of the Geographic Information System, or GIS for short. It's a map-making tool that has done many marvelous things, I should say. Yesterday we did a GIS workshop for the kids, and the kids learned so much, and we're so excited to learn that there's this tool that they can use, to track the types of land areas here in American Samoa, even wetland areas, places where, flood zone areas here in American Samoa, they can literally look it up using the GIS tool. So one of the things I also wanted to mention is that Department of Commerce is at the crossroads of disaster response and recovery. What I mean by that is, even during the pandemic, our team from the GIS group were deployed to help our Homeland Security office try to track the locations of the affected areas. People who were identified to be positive cases in the community, they managed to map all that out. And it really helped the community make data-driven decisions. They were part of the data collection throughout the response efforts of the American Samoa government. So although we play a small part, but it's a very critical part, because when it comes to land use permitting, all that data that we collect in real time helps us update the information, in our maps. So those are some of the key areas and functions of our responsibilities during a disaster response and recovery period. But what we do on the daily basis, or try to constantly do every year, is try to bring out educational outreach and public awareness to the community, trying to highlight the importance of land use permitting systems. Here in American Samoa, I'm not sure if many of our federal partners are aware that we do have communal land systems, and that's dispute the applications that come through for land use permitting. They think they can use the land use permit process to stop somebody from building on that communal land, but not knowing our function and focus is the environmental impact of that specific project that they're trying to build on the land. So that is, I want to say, part of the challenges that we're going through, because in order for somebody to rebuild or recover quickly, they need to go through this process. But part of this process is there is a public comment period or public notice period where anybody in the community can come out and specifically say why this project is, shouldn't be approved for a land use permit. So although there are good intentions behind it, but it also comes with its downfalls, I should say. So it's an ongoing process for us to try and improve on ways to not only expedite the process, but also still try to maintain our mandate as a coastal management agency. We also try to keep up with capacity building in our own agency and across ASG, hence the GIS workshop that we've been putting out during this week of Coast Weeks. One of the other important aspects of the PNRS or land use permit process is scoping meetings. And this is something I really hope to highlight throughout the community, where it's a pre-planning stage for a project where you can come in and ask all the key agencies, the member agencies of PNRS, about what do I need to have in place in order for me to apply for a land use permit regarding my project. Your project could be the most different or unique project on island. So having a scoping meeting really helps you line up everything that you need to ease up the land use permitting process, because I know one of the biggest complaints we have is the length of time it takes to get a land use permit to be approved. But those are some of the challenges. People think they can just submit something, but not knowing there's a lot of requirements they have to fulfill so that we can meet our mandate as an agency. Aside from the PNRS, and while I have this opportunity, I'm just going to briefly share that there are other functions of the Department of Commerce during disaster recovery. And presently, we're the agency that administers the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Funds for American Samoa, as well as the CDBG mitigation funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Both of these funds are going to be invested towards a Tuala'auta drainage, and the main purpose of that is to mitigate flooding in this large area. This is the Tuala'auta district that we're here in, and it's the most populated area, and it's very important for us to make sure we mitigate flooding in this part of our territory. So those are some of the brief functions of the Department of Commerce as far as disaster response and recovery is concerned. Faftai.
Test. Talofa, everyone. I know it's kind of late and I think everybody's getting tired, so if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to stand up real quick. Just stand up for a minute, stretch it out. Ryan, you're okay, you can sit down. All right, just hands up, hands up, hands up. All right, hands down. Simon says hands up, hands down. Everybody that moved their hands, you can sit down. Simon says hands forward, hands to the side. Everybody that moved your hands, sit down. Simon says that up, hands down. All right, everybody that moved your hands, please sit down. We got a few more left. Simon says hands down. All right, turn around. All right, if you turn, please sit down. Thank you. We've got a few. Wow, the FEMA guys are doing great. How about a big hand for FEMA? All right. All right, well, let FEMA win then. All right, thank you, everybody. You can sit down now. So my purpose here is thank you so much. Oh, and you guys. Oh, Simon says sit down. Thank you, Director. All right, well, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. My name is Will Spitzenberg with BO Consulting. We've been awarded to work the project to upgrade our building code. So when I talk about building codes, people fall asleep. It's such a boring topic. It's like, what's the big deal with building codes? And then, how many of you here were born in the 1960s? Anybody here born in the 1960s? Nobody? Well, that's great. If you were born after 1960, or if you were born before 1960, actually you're older. If you were born after 1960, you're actually younger than the building code that we're using in American Samoa right now. So, and I'm sure some of you are still thinking, what does that matter, right? The building code we're using in American Samoa is 1964, for your information. So it's 1964. So the government has been working on this for a while, and it finally got a chance to put this together. So my man Jim here, Pedersen, give him a hand, everybody, from Hawaii, who's been here with us for a long time. He's helping us out to upgrade our building code. So why does that matter? And I'm sure FEMA's like, oh, please upgrade the building code, because FEMA would be really happy if we have an upgraded building code. So the IBC right now, it's that we're following for the upgrading of this building code is International Building Code 2021. Now, you're supposed to upgrade the building code every 3 to 5 years. So the IBC is upgraded every 3 years. So there's a new one coming out next year in a few months. So that's how important the building code is, because there's always things changing. There's new technology coming out. So it's very important that we stay on top of upgrading the building code. So why does it matter? Well, we all believe in God, and we have a Bible. Now imagine if every church had a different book they worshiped on, right? So a Bible is kind of essential for all of us. We all go to different churches. We're all Christians. We'll believe in the Bible. It's like a code. So the building code, if your neighbor goes out and builds a house and it's completely different from what's in the code, you can't really complain about it if there's no code. So you have to have a code for everybody to follow. And that's why it's important that we upgrade our building code. So that's just kind of like a basic example of what I'm talking about. So the building code is very important. As we talk here in our panel, I think the title of our panel is Infrastructure Rebuild and Recovery. So now that the communication has come, the disaster has happened, now there's damage. What do we do? So this is important because the building code is what we're going to use to go out and do the assessments, give the report, get the reports done, make sure that we send that report to FEMA and Army Corps of Engineers. Those who are grantors who fund the recovery process, they need to know that we're actually following a code in rebuilding our community. So this is why it's very important. Now, it's very hard for FEMA to accept some of our applications because they're like, well, your code is 1964. We're like in 2021. So we need to upgrade the code. So this is very important. So if you want to get funding from FEMA and other agencies, we really got to be sure that we're upgrading the code to the most recent one. So Jim and I are working on this. We're actually doing a presentation tomorrow that goes into more details, what we're going to do and what we propose we do, and get the buy-in from all of you. We've met with all of the different departments already here in the government. Next month, we're going out. We're doing our public outreaches. We're having having meetings on the east side, one in Pango. It's going to be October 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. We'll be going to Manua as well. We'll be going out doing outreaches in Ofu, and we're going to do outreach in Ta'u. We're going to do 4 here in Tutuila. We want to go out and reach and talk to everybody, and we want to get the word out and get the people's buy-in to help us build this new code. There's no purpose of a code that you just approve and then nobody follows it. So it's very important that we get the buy-in from everyone. So we're very excited. I know it's going to be a little bit of a lengthy process. We have about 12 months to get it done, and we have to get it through the phono so they can approve it. And once they put the stamp on it, that means everybody has to follow it. Thank you very much.
It's 3 o'clock, so we can all go home now. Talofa, I want to first of all thank the federal partners for being here. It's really important that you see how we do things here, that you can appreciate when we're asking for assistance or asking for help, that you understand why there's challenges that we have and things that loops we have to go through to get assistance. So we really appreciate the federal partners as well as our partners from Red Cross. Your participation shows that you're very engaged and very see this as an important opportunity, because without you guys too, we won't be able to help our people, as well as other local partners that are here. So I'm here on behalf of the American Samoa Power Authority. We are a unique utility because we have 4 major utilities. We generate our own power, and we also distribute our own power to our customers. We pump water from our water wells as well as distribute it to our customers. And we also remove wastewater from houses that are on the sewer line, and also pump water, sewage from our customers that are on septic tanks. And we also do solid waste. So it's a very unique utility in the Pacific. I don't think any other utility in the Pacific has the same setup. So we are fortunate to be a government-owned utility because we can tap into federal funds for infrastructure upgrades, such as US EPA for water upgrading infrastructure. And then when disasters, we do our own documentation and assessments, and then provide the backups to FEMA for reimbursements. So we've, I guess, learned throughout the years of how important it is to document. I think it's one of those things that you learn as you go, and you also perfect it as you go. So we really appreciate FEMA's assistance with helping us. I'm also the liaison to for the American Samoa Power Authority to the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center, for the last 10 years, and I've seen a huge difference in the response from FEMA. It's been a lot better and a lot more inviting. So we really appreciate that from the FEMA side. I'm sure everyone's always asking for money for assistance, but then again, like the word goes, if you don't document, you don't do proper assessments, you're gonna get longer to get your money or your reimbursements done. So I'm sure that's the same for the government officials that are here as well. In regards to infrastructure, as you can tell, we're dealing with the major utilities for the island. So it's very important that after a disaster, we get our services back on. Depending on how serious the disaster is or the impacts it has on the infrastructure, our #1 priority is to get the water restored. So the fortunate thing about having a power and a water utility is we can, I don't want to say force, but tell our power guys, let's get power to the wells first, because that's a priority. Without water, life can be miserable at the houses. People understand when the power's out because of a disaster, but without water, it's a lot more. It makes things a little bit more uncomfortable. So that's our #1 priority. And basically, we are also here to support our essential services, such as the NOAA weather station, the LBJ hospital. During a disaster, we have a person on standby. They have a backup generator, so we have a person on standby there as well to make sure if our power does go off, we are there to assist with their backup generators. And then after disasters, we make sure that these critical facilities either get power through their generators or through our grid if there's not that much damage. So we've been very fortunate, knock on wood, there's no wood around here. We haven't had a major disaster recently, but we've lost one of our power plants during the tsunami. We were able to get that rebuilt thanks to assistance from FEMA. Very, very helpful. So that's the beauty of being a government-owned utility, is you can get these assistances versus being a privately owned utility. We try our best to keep our rates low, but we're at the mercy of the fuel suppliers. Whatever they cost, it costs us to buy fuel from them to generate power. That's how much we turn around and charge the customers for. So we've got some projects in the pipeline for renewables, but we'll discuss that tomorrow when we do our presentations. But we work side by side with Public Works and as well as the other agencies to get customers back on safely when there is a disaster or post-disaster. We don't turn the power off unless it's very critical or very unsafe. We can keep it on until it becomes unsafe, and then depends on the size of the storm. So we're there watching and listening and seeing what needs to be done, so that we can make sure our services are back up and running within a timely manner, especially the water. So for the post-disaster, when customers are requesting services, we then focus on our critical services first, and then whatever customers that don't have extensive damage, we try to get them back on, depending on where they are or how challenging the location is as far as the damages. So that's it in a nutshell. I guess it's 3 o'clock, so I'll try and keep it brief so everyone's tired, and we'll go from there.
Thank you to everyone. That was really informative of all of your roles in infrastructure rebuild and recovery. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, Lipea, you get an award for all the questions you asked, and then we'll give the opportunity to Jim.
Thank you, Ms. Director. I forgot to commend the communication panel. Really appreciate, again, the key word that when I look into a plan for this summit, untimely. You stepped out there and helped our community provide free minutes, and that gives hope to those who cannot afford minutes or data during the time of disaster, and with the continue helping our community. And the same token to our infrastructures panel representation this afternoon. Thank you so very much. We've seen you out there when there is a disaster. You sacrifice day and night to help our community. My from RCRAS, the service that we've been doing out there, we experienced a situation that about 3 flooding, a same family would show up at RCRAS. Remember, you know the flooding in front of Accuracy, where it's now DOH Center. That water that flow next to GS go down. That's where the area where that family will come, requesting for assistance. We even help assist with the representative from there. We went to the west side to give our RDO Payne a good look of the infrastructure and site there. Over at Nuance Tanga, the end of that village, there's a empty place sitting right on the beach there. When I met the family there last year, when Maria Lutz came down, we went and took her for a spot check. We told the family, we already advise you to evacuate your place because of the king tide last year. It affected that family.
though they said the wave just went into their home. Well, very great to see when we came yesterday, the family evacuated. They're not there. I'm pretty sure they heeded the advice to move away. It could happen again. Let's not hope there will be a fatality. My Rickwan's concern is that not just that one family over at Otovia area or around that Equity area. There are other places like Tafun, Fangaima area, low-lying area over there. Very great to hear building code, a new building code working into it. With our partnership with Homeland Security, we advise those families at those low areas to relocate. But somehow we feel at the same time, where are they going to go? Who's going to pay for their relocation? Some families, there are about 10 of them. It's a challenge. Listening and hearing to the plan that you're laying out, that will probably help Department of Public Works, Department of Commerce, to bring the actual light, the actual guidance to these people where they're living, to make a plan right now for the next untimely incidents that they will be safe. We want to help them all the time, but we cannot continue doing that to everybody. That will leave us empty for the next disaster. How do you feel about that situation? What will be your reaction, please? Thank you.
I'm going to respond according to the drainage mitigation plan for the Tualauta area, and Director Pitti can also elaborate on that. She did mention that project being funded through their under the CDBG ER program. As far as the cost-less drainage, that's also been we've been working with ODEBM, the Office of Director Lisa's office, in submitting a proposal for, so there are other funding opportunities that we're applying for that project. It's basically, it comes down to funding. But there's already a plan for that area in Kashules, and also a plan for the Fangaima Road, which is also part of our program, Director Lisa. And then the overall Tualauta, that's director. But as far as isolated individual ponding, flooding from families, residential, so I would recommend just reach out to TEMCO so that they can, and also your report from Red Cross, because we need those data, those information, but the public or the government cannot go onto private properties to collect. But if it's through TEMCO and through Red Cross, so that we can help develop a project for those kind of needs. And I'm pretty sure FEMA also has program for non-federal or non-government needs, or for a non-profit organization or for residential that they can be referred to for assistance. Thank you.
Test. I think I'll answer that from a different perspective, and from an urban housing and urban development perspective as part of the programs that we administer through Department of Commerce. I think the concern here is there are families living in flooded areas that are constantly impacted during a disaster. So in cases like that, there are government programs that cater to emergency solutions, and there is a program called Emergency Solutions Grant, and it's coming through the Department of Human and Social Services. It's a HUD program that allows a household to be relocated elsewhere during an emergency situation
not only to prevent them from being homeless or without a decent home, but also trying to buy more time for them to identify a new location to live in or to rebuild. There are also other government programs that do affordable home loans, either to repair or elevate the foundation of that home so that it's in compliance with homes that need to be nearby flood zones in the territory. So, but what we've learned over the years is no matter how many times we keep telling people that there's a certain specification for a home that's built near or around a flood zone area, they continue just to occupy that space at their own terms, which we cannot dictate. But when it comes to emergency and disaster, they immediately run to the government for assistance. But over and over again, we've been telling them how to properly build their homes. But gladly, there are programs, current programs that exist today that can address those types of matters. So I think what needs to happen is there needs to be coordination between some of these government programs and maybe with your organization so that when something happens, you know immediately who to go to get that type of assistance. I have a question for Mr. Tuato. I'm aware of the long-term transition that American Samoa has made from stream water catchment systems to groundwater for potable water supplies. My question is, in the event of disasters that occur as we know frequently, is ASPA encouraging villages or encouraging residents, I should say, to use roof catchment systems as an emergency backup water supply?
Yeah, thanks for the question. We encourage, there are still village water systems within certain areas, but we have nothing to do with village water systems. We do help fix if there's busted pipes or if they need pipes, as long as we have the resources to fix. We're actually going to, because of we're experiencing high chlorides in our water wells, we're looking into some grant programs to get proper pipes to assist with village water systems. EPA regulates, ASCPA regulates local water systems because they're not treated and they're not a potable or approved water system. We don't touch them, but we do provide assistance because it helps back us up if something happens. So we encourage those systems to maintain.
Yeah, I wasn't referring to stream water catchment systems, but for roof catchment systems that, say, one Ainga might have at their house, to encourage use of those. And I guess a related question, if you do you have any design or construction criteria for them, and just suggestions for how to put one in place?
At this time, we don't, but we do have a program that we assisted with the Onu'u Island because of the high chlorides. We got assistance through US EPA and ACPA to provide 50, let's say, 1,000-gallon tanks because of their high chlorides in water.
Right.
They opted to install them themselves, and again, we try to not. Because we don't regulate those water systems, we try not to encourage them, because if they get sick, they can come blame us.
Yeah.
So that's why ASCPA is involved with regulating those. But we encourage roof catchments or harvesting rainwater, especially on the east side where the high chlorides.
Yeah.
But I mean, a lot of people. I'm from the east side, so when I was growing up there, we had our own 55-gallon drum collecting water from the roof, because the government water system was in high chloride. So we encourage it, but we just don't. We don't have any plans other than Onu'u because of the situation there. We don't have any plans for Tutuila or Manua but it's a good idea. I mean, especially with we're experiencing high chlorides in some of our better wells. So that might be something if we can get assistance from US EPA or FEMA for funding, we can be happy to roll something out and provide the same assistance we're providing in Aunu to Tuila and Manua. Right, thank you.
Do we have any? All right, let's go, Ms. Baines from American Red Cross.
It was, so collectively, you folks have answered about 20 of my questions, which I'm pretty sure my colleagues are like, thank you, Jesus. We can go pretty soon. I do welcome the invitation for Red Cross to partner and collaborate with all of you. So the subject of GIS had come up, and for Red Cross, our mission is to assist the people who have been displaced from their homes. And our initial action is to do damage assessment. The last time I was here for Typhoon Gita, there was a difficulty in identifying where the families came from and in which homes. And I'm not sure if you've folks use the polygon to identify a mass area that has been marked as damaged so that we don't have to do house to house. But at that time, they were spray painting codes on the house. Has that process improved? Is there a improved way of identifying families and from the homes that they are from that have been impacted? So that's my first question. My second question is for the long-term recovery. Many people cannot go back home, and like we see for Lahaina, that's 3,000 homes of people who cannot go home, and because we're an island, there is no place for them to go. We're kind of sticking them in temporary housing places, and everybody's sort of kind of just trying to figure out with this grant that you folks have for rebuilding homes where people cannot go back home. I'm just trying to figure out how to tie our type of service in with you folks, and I truly look forward to working and collaborating with you folks so that our missions on both sides can be fulfilled. Mahalo.
Okay, I'll try to answer this precisely, I hope. So the first question is, have we improved on that data collection and how we identify where those severely impacted homes are? I think that's a question that needs to be answered as a whole by a group, because I can honestly say DOC is just one of many members of that data collection effort. We are part of a bigger team, so our focus on the GIS side is to collect the data as we go out to do assessments. But the overall picture is actually led by agencies like Department of Homeland Security. So, but I can honestly share that it's a work in progress for us to always try to improve on ways to immediately pinpoint those severely impacted areas. I can't give you a specific example right now, but I do know that on the GIS side, we try to keep up with the technology of today. Like if there are new softwares available and a new technique on utilizing GIS, we try to stay on top of it. And that's why I'm proud to say GIS in American Samoa was awarded a Global Recognition Award for learning how to utilize GIS to track other different things, especially the COVID-19 pandemic. The maps that the GIS team created helped our leaders identify where the positive cases were heavily, grouped up across the territory. So it's a work in progress, I should say, but we always strive to improve and make sure that the data is as accurate as much as possible. On your second question, I think I forgot the question.
The long-term housing.
Long-term housing is here in American Samoa, but unfortunately, funding is not enough, I should say, sad to say, because we get only a certain amount of allocation. So we have to be creative and identify other resources to cost match some of these costs. But it's never enough to build a full home. One of the HUD programs that we have to build brand new homes, affordable new homes, like a 3-bedroom home. It costs about $80,000 to build one, and that's very cheap compared to anywhere in the US. But nowadays, we've been heavily impacted by supply chain issues, costs of labor, costs of shipping itself has driven those costs a lot higher than ever before. So the cost of an affordable home is kind of like not really affordable anymore to our local community. So what happens is that means we can only fund a specific amount of homes, new homes. We can barely even build 10 new homes here on island with the allocation that we get every year so far. But fortunately, there are other programs that we try to match up these costs so that we could complete a full, decent, and affordable home for our people. I hope I've answered your question.
Jim, did you have a question? Oh, comment. Okay.
The question raised by the Red Cross is in using geographical information systems, and our company's been using those systems now for about just shy of 40 years, and we typically go into smaller rural and remote communities, and when we do for master planning purposes, it's a simple process to do what you're asking. It's simply adding to attribute tables in GIS. In simple terms, we've already got what we call a building layer of where existing buildings are in a village. And it's a matter, you can go village by village with the Puli Nu'u, and you can ask people to provide their names. In other places where you have tax records, you can link those, simply bring that data over into your attribute table in about 5 minutes. But if you don't have that information like that, that's linked to housing, believe me, you could go through a village here in very short order to collect that information.
John, go ahead. We have another question or comment. Oh, comment. Oh, hold on, John.
Just a quick comment. One thing that you have problems with is the government collecting individual data. There are privacy issues. So, individual household information may be restricted simply from privacy issues.
Were you able to hear that, or you want to? Okay. Thank you, John. John is a contractor over at the fuel tank farm. Does anyone else have a question? All right, I do have a comment or a response for Ms. Baines. So one, if you have recommendations on programs that Red Cross can help with our long-term housing and also with, what was the first question, with the GIS mapping, that would be greatly appreciated, and you can share that with our team or with our office, so it will become part of the report that we're sharing with everyone of the outcomes of this summit, because we're not just having a summit, we are gathering information and in collaboration with all the subject matter experts, so we have best practice, identify best practices and lessons learned, so we can move forward and at least we know something. But with regards to your grid location on identifying where the victims of the disasters are located, so that's what we're trying to work with FEMA, the IA. So when disasters are federally declared, we have three types of assistance. We have IA, PA, and direct funding, direct federal assistance, DFA. So in the IA, when they collect their information, which is exactly what we're looking for right now, when they collect their information at the Disaster Recovery Center, we need to have that information to inform form, the data, because right now we had requested with FEMA to provide us with information of all the families that receive IA in the Tualauta area, so we can provide the data that was requested of us for the benefit cost analysis. How much was the damages? How many families were affected? Are they in the repeat flooding area? So that's what we were hoping, that we would get the assistance from FEMA to connect with PA. We do PA, ODAPM does public assistance, and we need that information for our grant applications when we put together so that we have a strong application. So if we can get that data, we can identify which area had of the victims that were affected. But we do have a saying, and we do have there are Samoan directions. We say it's the third house, right next to the mango tree. Don't forget the big yellow sign in front. That's how we give directions here in American Samoa. Oh, you know the kaine, you know the house where all these little kids play in front of it, the blue house. That's why when they were spray painting people's homes after Gita, I was not happy, because they didn't come back and repaint it back to where it was. So please don't go painting our homes, right? Just say it's the third house with the big mango tree in front of it, in front. But the second question, you were asking about long-term housing. So long-term housing, we work together when disasters are federally declared in the long-term housing, we work together with FEMA and the SBA to assist us with long-term housing. And that's why I really wanted to bring the building suppliers, the materials and supplies, because we need to bring our private sector in this conversation so they know what houses, what approved plan for the long-term housing from FEMA, and then they will pre-order, because Director Petty said, one, they're very expensive, and two, we have shipping problems and the availability of all these materials and supplies. We are a containerized community. I've always said this. Everything is imported to our islands, and that's why there's so much time in our recovery phase of disasters, because we have to wait for supplies and materials to get on island. So as soon as TCO, Director Salmana, the territorial territorial coordinating officer, approves the plan on long-term housing with FEMA, our federal counterparts, then we'll come to a plan and approve housing plan for them. But also, the residents are given an option to see if they want to relocate more inland. This happened during the tsunami. People that were living along the shorelines, as you can see, we all grew up with everybody living along the shorelines. So they were given an opportunity to relocate more inland or on the mountains. Well, woe to those who don't have land more inland or on the mountains. So there were some families that were asked to relocate, and there was a plan with long-term housing in that regard during the recovery phase in the aftermath of disasters. I hope that answered.
Dr. Lisa.
But you can always help us. That is why we're having these conversations, so you can share what you can help American Samoa. We can bridge the gaps that we have, and we have identified challenges. Please let us know how our federal people can help us bridge the gap for the overall good of the people of American Samoa. The IA, individual assistance. Oh, the criteria. So when a disaster is federally declared and we identify a disaster recovery center, all the victims of this disaster, for example, Gita, would go there with all your documentation, ID, everything to say a water bill, electricity bill. They take everything to the disaster recovery center. Then they fill out the applications. Our FEMA people that are there to help us fill the applications, then they have a formula, and then they'll say, oh, you guys, this is what you're eligible for, this is the type of assistance. I'm sorry, we can't approve your application, but here's SBA. They will provide low interest loans. Am I?
Yeah, it comes back to it.
I see what you're saying. If it's the house with the mango tree,
Yes.
and you're saying it doesn't have a definitive address. FEMA has actually done this in different ways. We have utilized, it's not the first time where we don't have addresses. For example, you could have a community that is completely just wiped out, including the U.S. Postal Service, who helps us identify official addresses as well. We do use GIS tools for that type of information to look at before the incident occurred, after the incident occurred, and in terms of the individual assistance, it is truly, it's not a what we can provide for one household is good for another household. And so that's why we set up the disaster recovery centers with our individual assistance specialists who help. And then we also have our employees that also will go out into the community on foot in terms of trying to go door to door. And even if there are not doors, they're looking to help the people. And they do that through what we call our teleregistration center. And so the American Red Cross, for example, we'll have your phone number there. We'll have the 1-800-621-FEMA. And that's how, if the employee is not able to answer all of the questions of the disaster survivor, then we can give them that number. And we have a variety. Some choose to call a number, some want to talk to a real person, and some want to go online and actually answer the questions and provide their information online as well. So there's multiple, I wish I could say it's a really simple answer, and I hope there's not a fire outside, but I feel like are we supposed to be evacuating or something? But it's just not an easy, like, okay, we pay this dollar amount for, and it does go through head of household, and then there are certain circumstances if we have multiple families living in the same home, then we work through that too.
Thank you. Like I said, I do understand the individual assistance process and your steps. I was just inquiring if we're not doing, we didn't spray paint anyone's homes, but it was a real difficult process to identify the house that they came from, because everybody always has to make a left at the coconut tree. And once you make that left, it's either the third rock, the fifth tree, the red bush, the stone wall, but we can't put that in the application. They needed something. Do you folks do tax map keys?
So one of the key points I wanted to make, and I completely forgot to mention this, is one of the key responsibilities of the Department of Commerce now is broadband coordination on island. And one of the primary projects that's in the pipeline right now is establishing a physical address system for American Samoa. That's one of the most challenging initiatives in a U.S. territory. Even other U.S. territories are facing the same thing. So when we were trying to wait for our broadband allocations, FCC came up with a specific map of how there are certain households without internet connectivity, but we kept fighting them that there are certain ways for us to identify specific homes. So that's one of the key projects that I know is going to be very useful during disaster response and recovery, is
this physical address system that we are trying to work on. We do know that Virgin Islands or Puerto Rico, I think, has started it, but there's a lot of challenges that they're also facing. So we're looking at them as what are some things that we can learn from them to incorporate in our physical address project. So we do hope that in the near future, if any disaster comes up, that would be one of our go-to tools or systems to help identify heavily impacted areas.
Thank you. On the Big Island, on the Puna side, we have a lot of the way that they identify also, because they don't have addresses as well. Because it's a farm lot, it's communal land, people own the land. We have used either tax map keys or lot numbers because they were given assigned specific acres. But somewhere along the line, there's got to be some kind of identifier. So thank you for that. Good luck. I hope it comes through.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I worked the volcano, the Big Island, and that's where the true partnership comes in across all levels of government to include the nonprofits, the faith-based organizations, anyone who can contribute or to help with that type of situation.
Director Petty? Did you want to say something? Oh, are you guys saying to, okay. I thought that Director Petty wanted to say something, but Ben? Okay, I know. They say in Samoan, "Wavela fala." That means we've sat long enough, we warmed our chairs long enough. So right now, I know I'm afraid about the smoke outside. Other than that, on behalf of myself and my partner, Director of Governor's Resilience Office, Dr. Ama Tufayono, thank you very much to our panelists. We really appreciate you being there. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you very much. Director, I will now give this is now time for Director Ama to close our program for today. Please be here by 7:30 tomorrow morning. Tomorrow, we have one more day. We have great speakers lined up, and we hope to see you all tomorrow. Please come. Okay. Thank you, Director.
Before the closing remarks, I would like to say one announcement for tomorrow. That is, there's a slight change in our program, especially with our morning devotion that will be conducted by Reverend Tavae Ovile. So that's the only announcement that I would like to make. I think I will be brief with the closing remarks because I'm aware that the presenters for today have already exhausted every essential information for our solidarity efforts to strengthen disaster resilience in our community. So I comment first the presenters like the Benjamin Rede, the stakeholders, the trainers, the Power Hour presenters, and the panelists for your great contribution to this initiative. You have disseminated lots of good informations, and I know that the sharing of those informations will affect our efforts to promoting disaster resilience in American Samoa. I have some few observations. First, there is that concept, we roll. And I would like to add, we grow. We roll and grow. And I would like to bring one of the most exciting events in American Samoa as an example of that. That is the Fautasi race. The long boat racing in the ocean is a community activity. So everyone of the village community is involved. And I bring that to display this kind of we roll and grow together. And that's one of our powerhouse to what we are trying to achieve. The second one is the space, to recognize and respect the spaces between people, communities, and organizations. I like that term in Samoan called va, just the two syllables, va, but we have to teuleva. And to teuleva means we have to maintain and respect our relational ties. And then the third concept that I reflected on is connectivity. I would appreciate connectivity in terms of it, mechanical and technical term or usage, but I would like to add connection. That is connection with an X, not with a T, C-O-N-N-E-X-I-O-N. Connection is more effective on building human systems, human organizational systems. So we combine the two, connectivity and connection, which means that we combine the mechanical and the technical term with the human system or the biological, sociological systems. That's one of my thinking on this whole day. The second one is eye-catching for me was when our schools exited to return to their schools. What's really attracting me was the children or with the seedlings, the indigenous plants. And I think that really relates to our greening of the planet Earth, planet economy or the green economy, green infrastructure or everything with green. And I like that image because it gives us a hope. We plant today and then tomorrow we'll reap and enjoy its fruits. So building dialogue in every system is very essential and important. I want to share my story, my experience in my journey, and then I will tell the indigenous story or the traditional story. I started exposing to ecological and environmental studies from a religious point of view in the late 1980s. I did an extensive research in the islands of Samoa, in the region of the Pacific, and I managed to study in Germany. Continuing with that research and writing my dissertation. So it's already published online, and it's about the ecological theology of the oceans. And the research is based on the indigenous stories or the traditional stories, the wisdom and the knowledge of our ancestors. I'm telling this because with that exposure, I come to realize that there is a connection between indigenous science and modern science, or we can say advanced science. With my exposure in a university tertiary education, I had the privilege to get exposed to some of the academic settings, like from the University of Berkeley. I got an award to attend some of the advanced courses on the dialogue of science and religion. So I managed to attend the National University of Australia in Canberra, and I also attended some courses, advanced courses on the dialogue of science and religion at the University of Harvard, Boston University, Boston. There I also got other opportunities like continuing studies on science and religion based on ocean or Oceania at the University of Columbia, New York, as a postdoctorate researcher or scholar in residence. From that experience, I try to build dialogues or connections of modern science and indigenous wisdom. And I would like to share with you one of the traditional stories on the ecological science based on observations from the indigenous Samoans. When there is about a cyclone or a storm that is going to come, the ancestors observe the movement of birds. The birds will sense that there will be a disaster that is going to come. So when it's raining and windy, they will never fly in the air, because the birds know exactly what will happen to them when their feathers are wet. They will just fall down and die. But there is this peculiar bird species known in Samoan as the Tuamafa filimalae. Tuamafa filimalae is a type of pigeon, or the dove, matured and very wise. That bird will fly higher and higher behind the mountains. And the higher it flies, it will surpass or go beyond the clouds where the rain falls. And then there, the Tuamafa filimalae will fly freely and happily. The basic human or animal instincts is very important in that sense. And I think that's the combination of what's known as divine intelligence instilled in every creature created by the divine or by God in the beginning. That's the connection. We have to use that third instincts that connects us to nature. We have sometimes to observe and learn from nature. We are busy nowadays with all these technological and mechanical developments, which are very good. But we also have to consider the indigenous science and wisdom of our people. With that, I say, as one of our elderly folks said, we have to use what is known as CS. CS means common sense. What is sensible to us, that is what we have to use. In all these sharings and the information disseminated, we have to sit down and think and try to build dialogues, connect things, and when we see that they are not sensible, then don't use them. But we have to make sense and make sure that everything is relevant to our territorial context. With that, I say thank you so much for your time and efforts, and I wish you all the best and God's blessing. I would like to close this with a word of prayer. Whaftaitele le tua ilo wanga le lei malo alofa, ua e mai ai mātou i le whaiunga fwoi o le nei aso malo mātou whamoe moe. Whaftai ilo wanga le lei malau tau si ngā alofa, ilo lima taitaino i mātou ai maise. O le poto ma le ata mai o i lātou na mawhai, o na whaasoa mai, e na ia wha malo sia pea. A mātou tāpenanga, I taimi e tupu mai ai whaalawe lawe I lo mātou wola. Whamanuia ia I mātou uma I le nei tu aso. Pea mātou tu ua le maota nei, mātou oatu I o mātou ainga. Fua I le malosi whawhawina ia I mātou. Mātou tu e wheiloa I fo I le tai au fau o momua. A le vi inga lea e whawhoi ia te oe. As we go out from this place, may you guide us safely, O Lord, and may your grace, your peace, and your love be with us all, now and forevermore. Amen.
Thank you very much, Director. And with that, we have dinner tonight at 5:30 at Paradise Pizza. If you guys are able to make it, come. But please go and get some rest, freshen up. I know we're all tired. We have one more day. Thank you again.